Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held on October 14th, 2025. Kisukukit. We acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamukas, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleat First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from the Yakutat Nucleat and are members of Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. And with that, I'll call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. I will ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation. There has been a change to the agenda, a slight change to the agenda, that the agenda be amended to move item 11.3, Mount Fernie Park Road intersection agreement report, to the start of the business items of section 11. And the agenda for the October 14th, 2025 regular council meeting be adopted as amended. Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 4.1, a mover or seconder for the following staff recommendation: the minutes of the September 9th, 2025 regular meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Adia Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. And once again, the minutes of the September 9th, 2025 special meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Adia Kelly, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. And a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And speakers are asked to state their full name and community of residence when they approach the podium. And just for those who are going to speak, our corporate officer will time you, and she has a yellow card when you get to 30 seconds remaining, and then a red card when your time is up. We used to have a time clock, but it malfunctioned horrendously, made things really confusing. So with that, I'll turn to our corporate officer and ask to invite people up.
Certainly, Your Worship, and I apologise for the mispronunciation of any names that I say tonight. Robert Oleksuk is our first speaker this evening.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Robert Oleksiak. I live in the Cedars. And before that, I lived in the Riverside area, in the Pinnacle Ridge Chalets. I was the strata president. I'm talking about the Mount Fernie Provincial Park intersection proposal. And the reason I told you that I used to live in Riverside is because I think I can speak to both sides of the highway. And the reason I want to talk about both sides of the highway is because I went through the staff report today. I read it all. I made some notes, and very little was said about the east side of the highway. There's lots of talk about the west side of the highway, the provincial park, the people in the Cedars, the Anderson Road, the RDEK, and all that stuff. And I would just like to highlight a comment from the Director of Finance that was put into the report. Overall, most of the report was positive to the idea, but this one comment kind of really stuck with me. And it was, contributing current taxpayer money for an intersection that benefits mainly the citizens in this development, the Cedars, and recreational users is not financially responsible. I think non-factual statements like this shouldn't be used to make decisions going forward for this area. The report talks a lot about, as I said, the west side of the highway, but any improvements to the intersection in that area will also benefit the east side residents of the highway, which is part of the city of Fernie. I did a tally to have a look at how many tax-paying units there are. There is residential, approximately 300 tax-paying units between the east side and that's just on the east side. You got to include the Stanford Hotel, which has 83 rooms. And then if you include the Cedars, there's about 500 tax-paying units involved in that area. So if this meeting is about whether the city should be prioritizing an intersection change in that area, it's not just about the quote recreational users and citizens of Fernie, of the Cedars. I'm sure other people are going to stand up and talk about all the issues with that intersection, trying to turn right from the Cedars area onto the highway on a busy powder day, or even more dangerous on the other side of the highway, trying to turn left from the Riverside area, especially when the snowbanks are high and they haven't been cleared. Now that we've got the gas station there, there's also kids who cross for Slurpees. There's the Fernie pathway that goes through. There's the accidents that happen seemingly every year on Vanderburg Road. I think an improvement to that intersection will not only slow traffic down for wildlife and for people using the highway, but I think it's a much needed improvement to that area of the city of Fernie, which is often neglected. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Alexiak.
Our next speaker is Jen Riddell.
I was told that I had to speak so you knew actually why I was here. So bear with me. I'm not as eloquent or succinct as that. I am speaking about Mount Fernie Park Road intersection agreement. I live in the Cedars neighborhood. This is a discussion that comes up constantly, not only for the safety of the park users, the Nordic trails, the east side, but also just those on the highway turning right. We've had 2 doctors' wives who have now been hit and injured, cars totaled just from turning right, going up to the Nordic trails. Crossing the number of people that come to the Stanford and are constantly coming up to the park, that crossing now is disastrous. And it's a constant use as an intersection, and there is no formal crosswalk or intersection, but it is used that way. Turning left from the Cedars neighborhood, getting out onto the highway, the frequency with the number of people in the developing neighborhood, not only the Cedars neighborhood, and the increased use that we have now from the campground. It is a city of Fernie problem and not just relegated to those of us that live out here, which was kind of a new development and forgotten. So I please ask that you take into consideration just the number of people, the future development that's continuing to happen, and the safety of everyone, not just the people in that neighborhood, but most people in Fernie use the Nordic trails, the campground, and the biking trails in that area. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riddell.
Next, we have Wilco Tymenson.
Good evening, Wilco Tymenson here, speaking from the same perspective as the previous speakers. I too live in the Cedars. I've lived there for about 5 years, and prior to that, I lived in Riverside for about 15 years. So again, I have extensive experience from both sides of the community. I certainly want to echo the comments around the increased volume of traffic that are coming in that intersection, and it's not just because of the new homes in the Cedars. I do want to comment as well that the package you have with the map of the Cedars is not even all of the homes that are within that community. There's actually about another 20 or 25 lots that are not on that map that are already sold. Some of them have houses on them and people living in them full time. As well, of course, as many people know, there's been new condos that have been developed on the east side of the highway. Some of those there's about 7 or 8 of them already that are multi-dwelling units. And then Bill Ing, of course, has his development further behind that neighborhood as well. And those roads are paved, and although no homes in them at this point. So there's going to be continued growth and expansion of this intersection. And certainly the gas station hasn't aided in individuals. More and more people who are actually coming through town or heading to the ski hill are stopping at that intersection. And for individuals from both sides of the highway wanting to turn, that has provided way more people exiting the highway and delays traffic. Certainly the comments as well around the pedestrian traffic. When we lived in the Riverside, there was actually a pedestrian crosswalk slightly east of that intersection with blinking lights. And at one point, I think those lights ended up not working anymore. And I'm not sure if it was the RDEK who took them out, but that intersection and that crosswalk was removed. And at this point, there's actually no crosswalk except for that intersection. And certainly when we live there, we cross that intersection daily to access the park and the trails. And we continually see people doing that. Turning right off the highway, there is no deceleration lane. There are no street lights. And certainly in the evening, people come flying past you and miss your vehicle by inches because they're all trying to accelerate and leave town. So I certainly want to endorse and hope that council accepts the recommendation from the CAO, particularly given that it doesn't financially commit the town or the city at this point. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you, Mr. Tymoson.
Last on our list is Meredith Root.
Good evening. My name is Meredith Root. I'm also a resident of the Cedars. Before living there, I lived in Alpine Trails, which is on the opposite side of town. And I'm going to speak as a resident of the Cedars, but also as a trail user and observant citizen of Fernie. I have had issues with that intersection from every single direction, which anyone who lives and accesses the provincial park would probably say they have similar experiences. The positioning of that intersection where the speed limit changes is problematic because you have a deceleration issue eastbound and you have an acceleration issue heading westbound. And the lack of a turning lane, specifically turning right there, means that people who are living in the Cedars or heading into the provincial park often use the shoulder as a sort of impromptu turning lane, which is not only illegal, it also presents a safety issue to any cyclists who are heading westbound in that area and doesn't really reduce the risk of being rear-ended. So me personally, I have stopped using the shoulder at all. And the impact of that for me is that I often get honked at, I get tailgated, and I come very close to getting hit, just simply for following traffic laws right there. Heading across the highway, like north-south, I've witnessed people, families crossing with little kids with strollers. Like there's a huge, huge safety risk there. I've witnessed tourists who are kind of trying to like visually get their bearings and not sure where they are, having to also navigate that intersection, which is problematic. And then I myself have had issues navigating that intersection. So it poses a relatively significant risk visually as a person who is not involved in traffic engineering or roadway engineering, just like observing that area. Several months ago, I presented a petition, and I don't like that word because it carries a really negative connotation, but I just presented the issue formally to the Cedars, to the Riverside communities in a written way that people could engage with online. And I shared that as well in a community Facebook group, and it has received 702 signatures and a number of comments with people sharing their personal experience with that area as well. My time on the other side of town in Alpine Trails, there's a significant amount of development there with pathways, with stop signs, with speed gates that not only signal to pedestrians to watch for traffic, but it is a visual indicator to traffic to watch for pedestrians. And that's because that area gets used frequently. The Ferry Creek trailheads are there, the swine flu trailheads are there, and that area is very well trafficked for a really, really good reason. I would argue that the provincial park offers more economic value than the Ferry Creek area. And because of the development there, I am here to show my support for this agenda item and investment from the city of Fernie to put in better intersection and traffic flow management for vehicles and pedestrians.
Thank you, Ms. Root. Anyone online indicated?
That's a good question.
No?
Oh, hang on.
Oh. Come on up. Just identify yourself and where you live.
My name's Chad Weeb. I live in Montaigne development up there. And I'm actually here to not talk about that, to talk about the development variance that Montaigne development is putting forward tonight for where the pavement ends on Coal Creek and is going to go the roadway up to where the turnoff for the campground is. And they are asking for removing the requirement for curb, gutter, and underground drainage, removing the requirement for asphalt surfacing, as well as removing the requirement for illumination on that road. They're also requesting, or they're currently building 50 to 100 campsites down that road. That is going to be a considerable amount of traffic. That's going to be truck traffic, trailer traffic. There's going to be who knows how many pedestrians walking on that road, logging trucks, dust from trucks and trailers, from logging trucks. Families are going to come in there. That's going to be their main access point, and people go where they know. So when there's families that drive in on that road and they want to go to town, they want to go to the aquatic center or the skate park or anywhere in town, they don't know all the trails in town, and they're going to go down that Pole Creek Road, and it's going to be dusty, and it's not going to be lit, and there's going to be a lot of traffic going both directions. And it's going to be dangerous. It's going to be a nightmare. That road, if that campground is going ahead, that road needs to be paved. There needs to be streetlights, and most of all, there needs to be a sidewalk for pedestrians and children on bikes. Someone's going to end up getting killed there with that many people coming and going. It's going to be a year-round thing, and it's not going to be good. The last time the city council approved a development variance for Montaigne developments, we now have 7-meter wide roads in Montaigne. We have nowhere to park. We have nowhere to pile snow. In front of the new elementary school, that's also 7 meters wide. There's straight down ditches. When that school opens and people are dropping kids off, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. So I ask that the council does not approve that development variance and go by what the rules of the bylaw say currently. It's going to be better for the community, better for anyone staying in that campground, especially families and children's safety. There is another variance as well for the Montaigne floodplain bylaw exemption. I'm not going to get into that one too much. I'm not sure why you'd give an exemption to start building on a floodplain. I was looking at the report, the hazard assessment report from Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, and it basically looks like that entire campground is in somewhat of a floodplain. I don't know if any of you guys have been down there, but they've been kind of making a bit of a mess, dumping dirt and debris into Coal Creek, into Brewery Creek. I've been in contact with natural resource officers, and as far as I know, there is still an open and ongoing investigation for Montaigne and Peristone not having the proper permits to do what they're doing near fish-bearing waterways down that way. And I'd highly recommend the city look into that before approving anything else for that campground. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Weeb. No one online?
No one online, your worship.
As always, grateful for folks coming out and express their concerns. Appreciate you taking the time. That brings us to item number 6, Committee of the Whole, and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendation that council enter into Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Audia Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. We're now in committee, and our first item is project update on our integrated infrastructure capital plan from our Director of Engineering. Welcome. Engineering and Public Works. Sorry, I don't want to sell your title short.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's is to present the outcomes of the update to our integrated infrastructure capital plan that we've completed with our consultants ISL Engineering. So in 2020, the city completed the integrated infrastructure capital plan, and that document is used to guide the city with capital planning based on an approach that investigates our infrastructure's condition, capacity, risk, and cost, and then justifies the collection of funds and the allocation of those funds towards the utilities. So since the completion of that integrated infrastructure capital plan, the city's focus on asset renewal has significantly shifted. In the preceding 5 years to the 2020 plan, we were investing a significant portion of our utility reserve funds in replacing aging linear assets. And in recent history, we've had to shift our focus to water and sewer capital project portfolio that's finding solutions at our source and treatment infrastructure primarily. So a few of the key initiatives here, just to underscore that we certainly haven't been inactive in our utility portfolios. We've been addressing these risks, some of which were structural rehabilitation to extend the life of our reservoir, designing UV treatment and applying for a filtration exemption through Interior Health, and also setting aside funds for that UV implementation. In wastewater, we've been focused, as you know, on the designing and planning of our wastewater treatment plant upgrades to meet our legislated requirements, and also significant major maintenance to our existing treatment plant and the desludging and aerator replacements. And then the lift station designs that we prepared the funding applications for back in the winter. And then we've also had to work to address some environmental effects on our infrastructure, such as slope stability and flooding in our linear asset portfolios on the CNL right-of-way and across Coal Creek. And for road replacements, we have been focused on tackling some of the poor condition roads with no utilities under them in order to reserve those utility contributions as much as possible for the implementation of the above described projects. So as a result of this, if you were to compare the 2020 IICP versus what we've presented tonight, the project list is largely the same. A lot of the risks identified to our linear assets still exist as they did 5 years ago. But the key update or the key objectives of this update was to not to generate a new list of projects, but mainly to update the cost estimates of those linear assets replacements to reflect current construction pricing. So we know from our other projects and designs that if we based our long-term project planning on levels, the costing that was done in the 2018 pricing from the city's asset management investment plan, we were certain to end up with our projects being underfunded. And so we wanted to determine what gap is emerging from there. We were also wanted to refine the condition rating of our roadways in our data sets that generate these numbers in order to more accurately reflect the current condition and priority ratings. So in this update, we saw road conditions that are based on actual testing from our pavement condition assessment, as opposed to just linear degradation of roads over the lifespan. And then finally, as you know, we calibrated our stormwater model. And so again, it's just layering in that improved data that allows us to understand the risk based on actual measurements of flows in our storm system, as opposed to modeled parameters. So the key outcome of this update is the comparison between the value of the projects to address our high-risk linear asset projects and then what we're currently investing in our 4 primary infrastructure reserves. So assuming we invested all of the current water and sewer reserve contributions to addressing these risks, it would take over 20 years for the water system and 10 years for the sewer system to address all the high and very high priority categorized utilities. And this timeline exceeds that of short term, like it classifies the risks and makes recommendations about on what term you should address the risks. And obviously that exceeds a short-term time frame and leaves us exposed to the risks associated with the failure of our linear assets. So you can see we have been working to address this difference between 2018 and now in several areas. So I'd highlight one being the sewer utility investment rate is a lot higher already than the recommendations in the 2018 AMIP report. And that's based on the fact that in 2022, council approved annual 4% per year increases to our sewer utility in order, as we saw the evolving need for our wastewater treatment upgrades. And so then there's therefore significantly less of a discrepancy in the amount of time to address this risks in the sewer system as opposed to the 20-year horizon on the waterfront. In the transportation reserve category, the levels of investment have been reduced over the last 5 years from 1.2 million to the 700,000 you see there in order to pay down the short-term loan on the operations facility. And so the completion of that loan is this year. And should investment levels be increased back to the AMIP recommended values, it would significantly reduce that number of years to address the risks in our road portfolio from 18 to approximately 10. And not everyone is aware, but the water and sewer reserves are solely funded by utility fee collection and not by taxation. And so as a demonstrative example, should the city aim to address our short-term linear infrastructure risks in an actual short-term timeframe, let's say 5 years, it would require 148% water services increase and a 70% sewer service increase. So I'm obviously not providing that as a recommendation tonight, but just to shed light on the discrepancy between our investment levels and our current utility fees. ISL also provided insight into a few potential ways that we might be able to.
Sorry, Ms. Ware. Councilor Ramadas?
Thanks, Your Worship. I thought I'd ask a question right away, if you wouldn't mind. If you can go one slide behind, Director, if you wouldn't mind. So you did mention in the report, and you just mentioned here as well, that because of our obligation with the operations center, that came at a cost of us not funding our road reserves in the proportions that the IICP recommended. So can either yourself or the CFO, could you guys shed some light on what this might mean with our fire hall build? Because that obligation is going to last for another 30 years, right? 30 years. And what would that impact have on, let's say, road reserve or anything else on this list? Like, what's the impact going to be on that year on year obligation for the next 30 years?
Sure. Our Director of Finance is online. I'm not sure if he has on hand the annual repayments as compared to the sum that we're paying down on the operations facility, but my understanding is that those decisions would potentially be independent of each other in terms of how you fund the payment, the loan payment on the fire hall. But are you looking for a comparison of the number? Like, is it going to result in a $500,000 payment annually? It's a long-term payment proposed as opposed to a short-term.
I understand what the payment stream is going to look like for the many years, but is it fair to say that this reduced level of contribution to road reserves will stay if nothing else changes because of this obligation that we will have towards fire hall?
Mr. Boranowski? And then Mr. Burdett.
I'll hand it to Mr. Burdett if I
Okay.
can when I'm done, or Your Worship, you can, of course. When the financing for the facility was addressed 5 years ago, we opted, council, being the royal we, council opted to pursue short-term borrowing, making the payment of that loan over 5 years, and B, to reduce the contribution to the roads reserve specifically to pay for that. So council made a decision to reduce savings in one area to pay off a short-term loan that really should have been paid by savings in another area that hadn't been made, theoretically. Now, as that loan's last payment is this year, council can decide whether they want to see that current level of taxation not change and those funds go back into that reserve, bringing its contributions back up to a recommended level, or do something else with them. And so they are, to some degree, independent of each other. Borrowing in one area doesn't necessarily mean reduced contributions in another. the decision not to repay the loan with additional taxation, but rather to reduce savings was a intentional decision that was made. If that clarifies that from 5 years
I'll
ago.
just give Mr. Burdett an opportunity. Mr. Burdett?
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Apologies, I'm not there in person. I'm feeling under the weather. But Mr. Bornowski's right. It ultimately will be up to council if they want to keep reserve investment lower in order to help offset, the fire hall loan, for example. And we will certainly be discussing that come budget time, and I'll have lots of slides on that particular topic as we go through it.
Okay. Further?
Essentially, what I'm trying to say here, Your Worship, is something has to give, right? At the end of the day, it's you choose to not put money into certain reserves, or you hike up taxes, right? So those are the really two levers that we have going into budget season.
I know Councillor Hamilton has a question, but I wanted to ask Ms. Weir, like the $700,000 under the roads above utilities, has that now been fully recalibrated given the pavement condition assessment? And is that, like, does it have to go back up to the higher number, or are we comfortable that this is adequate given, because, reading the report, it seemed to me that the pavement condition assessment reduced some of the urgency in terms of maintaining our roads.
If I may, so we don't have to increase the contributions, but if we leave them how they are, it'll take us 18 years to address our risk of the degrading roads. And so that's not a short term addressing those risks. So I would say they should come up, back up now that that loan payment is finished in order to help us address the risks of our roads.
Well, I guess my question is, maybe to frame it a different way, the pavement condition assessment then did not reduce the risk as far as our roads are concerned.
That's correct. It downgraded some of them from priority 3 to priority 2 based on like their actual rideability and the different indexes that they measure, but it didn't. Overall, the pricing went up 30%, and so it didn't lessen the total cost of addressing our risks in roads.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Firstly, to Councillor Ramadas's point, he's exactly right. We can either raise taxes or we can underfund our reserves, which is what we've been doing for generations, which is why our reserves are currently so short funded. And following that, my question to Ms. Weir is, you mentioned the decision to increase sewer utilities 4%, and you mentioned the need to potentially raise water fees by 148% to catch up. But can you, in the vein of, what have we been doing for reserves, what has been our kind of standard historical increase for reserves and for utility increases over the last 10, 20 years?
Mayor, through to council. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I know that the 4% was a dramatically higher increase. So I would say that it's likely more in the 1 to 2% annually increases in the last sewer and water bylaw. But I don't have the data in front of me about how high we've been increasing our utility fees over the last 10 years. Happy to get that for you.
Councillor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. So Director Weir, just to actually give us a little more context, we talk about possibility of roads being 18 years, but how much degradation happens during that time? Like, does that not just, I'm struggling to articulate it, but do we not just then have more problems because we've waited 18 years? So what we fixed 18 years ago now is needing fixed again, or something else needs fixed because it hasn't been as timely. Like, what is sort of the general life cycle of like a collector road?
Sure, Mayor, through to council. I think you're exactly right. If we take 18 years to address the short-term risks, then all of the risks that we didn't address will continue to degrade over time. And in the roads, I would say that's even more significant. So 18 years, a typical asphalt road span is like 25 years. So if you're waiting 18 years on a 25-year lifespan, that's a lot higher impact than on sewer. A lot of the linear assets, last 100 years in the ground. So if you're waiting 10 years on a 100-year lifespan, it has a difference.
Councillor Rodas?
Thanks, Your Worship. Apologies, I haven't seen the schedule yet, but when is our next big road work that is on top of our utilities coming due?
Mayor, through to council, we have no road work on top of utilities currently planned. So, and we are working to develop our longer term capital plan right now, but we would be continuing in the same vein currently with planning for a road project not on top of utilities in order to save the utility investment fees, and is the current direction.
Further?
This is a committee of the whole, Your Worship. I'm just going to do a little bit of forward thinking here, and maybe a what if question here. Is there any world where it may be actually a good idea to go and rip the Band-Aid off, go after the hardest problem, go after the ones that are like the roads that are on top of utilities, figure out a way to upgrade them? Like, is there any scenario where that seems to be a good option? Like, have you guys thought about that at all?
Mayor, through to Councillor Ramadas, yes, I think that is certainly an option. And I think that was one of the recommendations from ISL, was to start tackling the risk in your water and sewer assets, regardless of having to pay for the road over top. So yes, I think we'll be trying to come up with a strategy where we can shift some funds into continuing tackling linear utility replacement as opposed to waiting. But again, the capital improvements at Ferry Creek for UV and at the wastewater treatment plant also require the same reserves. And so that's why we had been trying to save in those reserves to be able to fund some of those projects. But
yeah, and I appreciate Councillor Ramanas's question, but that strikes me as particularly fact specific, that you have a underground utility that is at a certain point of its lifespan that makes that decision, and a pavement condition that makes that decision economic in terms of the long-term planning.
yeah, so I think the table speaks to that some, in that it breaks out the road investment, the $20 million needed investments in the road, to those that are above utilities and not above utilities, in order to show that if we want to tackle the utility risks, we also need the 7.6 million in the roads reserves to tackle those utility risks.
Thank you. Councillor Oda Kelly?
Yeah, I did want to point out too that some of the work that we have done on our transportation networks has been also grant funded, which has offset what could have been taxation, just for the public listening, that has significantly saved money as well. And you noted, Director, in your report that it was made clear that there won't be grant funding for active transportation in the foreseeable future, as per the government's giving us that information at UBCM, Union of British Columbia Municipalities.
Back to you, Ms. Weir.
Thank you. So ISL did provide some potential ways that we could consider for reducing the burden of potential utility fees increasing. So an outcome of the storm analysis was that there are very few recommended upgrades to address risk in that asset class. And so council could decide to temporarily reduce the stormwater reserve contributions. But I do want to note that the IICP only looks at existing linear assets. So we're not if you reduce stormwater contributions, it doesn't take into account any stormwater management improvements across town that would elevate a level of service in areas of known ponding. So it's not, it wouldn't be saving for upgrading service, but it's that the risks in that utility are comparably or significantly lower than in the other utilities. So that could be a strategy to reduce increasing costs. And then, as we've sort of touched on here, the pavement condition assessment data resulted in fewer roads being classified as moderate priority, showing that our roads weren't actually linearly degrading on a perfect 25-year schedule, and that it did reduce the financial impact and risk of degradation to the roads. And so council could choose to reduce investments in the road reserves in order to address the utility risks, as degrading roads present less physical risk to citizens than degrading water and sewer. But again, they are highly visible and impact people's day-to-day experience of navigating town and their satisfaction. So I understand that. And then ISL did recommend a few things to reduce the overall cost of that roads portfolio. So that estimate was generated based on full rehabilitation of the roads, so reconstruction of the base gravels, and we will continue looking for ways to reduce the capital costs while maintaining quality. So, that might be strategies such as milling off the pavement and or repaving, but that does limit our ability to address drainage concerns, add active transportation infrastructure. When you're doing those more replacing like for like roadways, you don't get the opportunity to improve the roadway. Yeah, and so these, among other options, will be brought forward to council for consideration as part of the general utility and operating budget process. And then just finally wanted to highlight some of our next steps with this data. So they have presented, the trend that we are all aware of. Construction pricing has increased approximately 50% since 2018 for water, sanitary, and storm categories, and 30% for road construction since 2018. So this emerging disparity just continues to underscore the need for us to reevaluate our utility rates and ensure that our funding strategies are aligned with the real world conditions. So we will continue to provide updates like this on the longer term to make sure our investments are matching real pricing. And then we'll be using this updated pricing to bring a 20-year capital plan to you in the coming months, and that will include the other known costs that I was speaking of in terms of the fire hall, the wastewater treatment plant, the other lift station upgrades, along with the data we do have on our water and sewer facilities and these linear asset investments. And then we will initiate our facilities assessment and capital plan, which will have another piece of data to layer in terms of being able to compare risks across our asset categories, including our facilities, not just our linear assets. And council can expect a budget request for 2026 to further evaluate the condition of the water and sewer utilities. So right now they are lines on a map, largely based on age of the infrastructure and the number of leaks and those kinds of factors. But the goal would be to do more cameraing of the sewer lines and more detailed leak inspection to try to further classify how much risk those pipes are actually causing to us and whether we can defer any of the replacements if the pipes are actually in good condition. We have seen, water pipes last 150 years. So if you're planning to replace them and they're only 100 years, maybe we still have more time than we think on some of them. But and we will bring some recommendations about increasing utility fees to bridge this gap. That's all I have for you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. With regards to the pricing and the kind of more current pricing, I can't remember which page it was on the report, but ISL mentioned that they were using recent bids and specs that they'd received. How recent were those? Like, was that from this current building season that they're basing that off of, or is that last building season? The crux of the question is, are we pricing in enough of an increase with tariff impacts? Like, are we starting to see the impacts of tariffs on linear asset costs? Or should we actually be predicting that we're going to see another 20-30% increase in materials?
I think ISL was using recent data in terms of this year and last year, and then applying inflationary increases across the assets. So I think that it's a good snapshot of the current climate. And could I predict that it would inflate 50% since 2018? No, but I think that it's based on good, recent relevant data that we should have decent confidence in it.
Thank you. Councillor Ramirez?
Not a question, Your Worship, just an observation. Again, great work on this IICP. I'm a big fan of this report. It helps us with, evidence-based policy making, which is what we should be aiming for. Just hoping I can get the latest and greatest binder with the latest IICP pricing models also incorporated into it, if you could.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. Thinking future-wise, reading the report, well, actually, for a first question, in the report, it talks about a Chicago storm. And I'm curious if you can clarify what a Chicago storm is in their modeling.
Maybe Nick would have better memory, but it's I am not the engineer who designed it, but it's like a standard storm, like a IDF curve that intensity, duration, and frequency curve that's used to model the impacts of stormwater. So I don't know why it's called Chicago or exactly what it is, but.
And then, so, following on that, there was a mention, page 68 of our agenda, around the design rainfall plus 10% for climate impacts. How confident are we that plus 10% is going to be an accurate number? I guess the question I'm asking is, what are we seeing, or what is the industry seeing as far as IDF curves? Is 10% a valid increase, or are we going to be seeing more frequent events like the atmospheric river from November 2021, where we got whatever it was, 3 months worth of rain in 24 hours?
Mayor, through to Councillor Hamilton, we did do a project, I want to say 5 years ago now, where we worked to update our IDF curve that's in our bylaw that defines the storm. And we had WSP study all of the available climate data and determine how much we should be inflating our curve for climate change. And essentially the findings were that we don't have enough data in our region, and our region is so non-typical of the surrounding regions. They were even hesitant to compare it to, somewhere as close as Sparwood or different places. So the outcomes of that study were sort of in line with the 10%, like applying a general inflation to the curve, as opposed to being able to just develop a new specific curve for Fernie storms. And I guess from our engineers' recommendations, we see that as a number they apply often, and we rely on their expertise.
Councillor Shoesmith?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. No, happy to see this report across my desk. This stuff is more or less why I ran for the office, as I was concerned about the infrastructure and the pipes particularly. Where to start? I'm looking at the track record here. In the past, we've got shortages, 50%, like the prices are just nuts. We suffer at the vicissitudes of a global trade, government policy, economic headwinds, and what have you. And while I'm all for socking away money, if we sock it away and then it inflates away to nothing, why punish the current taxpayer? It's just a thought in my head at the moment. But on the other hand, pipes in the ground, that's tangible, and we're currently losing a ridiculous amount of water to leakage, absolutely a gross amount. And for my part, I think the more we address these issues and the faster, the better, because the less we're risking those tax dollars. When we convert that money that's ethereal and has a fluctuating value, seems to be diminishing, into a pipe, that pipe's got a value to the town for another 150 years, apparently, which is kind of cool. So as far as the water and sewer goes, I'm all for ripping off the Band-Aid and like whatever projects need to happen, we should streamline them, get them going as quickly as possible. In terms of the pavement, I'm a little less strong in my stance with that because, I mean, it sucks to drive on a rutted road. It's terrible. I mean, it sucks needing a Unimog to go to the store, but that's just a question of cost and it's fairly easy to repave or replace a road, you know? Just thought I'd weigh in.
Thank you. Other questions from council? I was reflecting on Councillor Hamilton's question about stormwater and our surety of the 10% and that it is the least, feels like the least risky utility at the moment. But I do, you know, having read all the reports, there's a lot of mention of climate change in all the reports this evening. And that's a confidence question. I think maybe we should revisit just for our own comfort, because the calculation, you said you did and I apologize for circling back to this, you did a study 5 years ago that was immediately prior to the atmospheric river. What were the outputs or outcomes of the atmospheric river, and have we revisited that calculation with that in mind? If you understand what I'm asking.
We did, the major thing we did with the outcomes of the atmospheric river was to update the Coal Creek floodplain mapping. So we did a full study about the bathymetry of the river and the flows and what flows we should anticipate. And so that was a major outcome. This, I agree with you, climate change it has a high risk. I would clarify that this asset or class that we're referring to is our piped linear infrastructure and not our dikes. And so we've done a lot of work with, you know, findings of climate change and to try to upgrade our dikes to provide broad scale protection. I think the risk is lower because the flooding would be localized in these areas. Like I don't deny it would have real impacts to people's homes, but it hopefully would be relatively localized to specific pipes that would back up and cause localized flooding in areas of town.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from council? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Weir. Look forward to the budget discussions where all this comes into play. Didn't think I'd ever say that. Councillor Artie Kelly.
Just one small ask. Could someone print the IICP for me, please and thank you?
Me as well, please.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Mr. Bornowski.
Your worship, can I just get clarity? Councillor Ramadas, you're after the same thing, just a full package of the final document, printed, bindered, ready to go. Is that correct? No, we will do that. Absolutely. We'll make sure that we have a set printed in the council library. Yep.
And now we're all powered up. Item 9.1, our delegation this evening. Kelly Smith, Employer Liaison, Fernie Work BC Center. Welcome. Oh,
Good evening and thank you.
No, we're
I'm
in
just
committee
going
of the whole
to
still.
take a quick moment.
yeah, we come on a committee of the whole, the delegation.
It's not, can I exit out of this? Here, it's me here.
Such a busybody. Not you, please.
Well, that's been leveled at me, I'm sure, once or twice. Good evening, Mayor and Council, administration staff, and members of our community. Oh, yep.
Yes, we need your presentation.
I guess you do.
We won't start your time until the presentation starts. And you have 10 minutes.
10
Ms.
minutes?
Smith.
I don't think I'm going to take all of
Okay.
that, but see how fast I can talk. I can start. So my name is Kelly Smith, and I'm here to present on behalf of Kootenai Employment Services and Work BC to share a little bit about DEEM, which is Disability Employment Awareness Month for October. So thank you very much for affording me the opportunity to be here and with your very busy agendas. I'm here today to share a few statistics, applaud what is being done, and look forward to collaborating for opportunities. Disability Employment Awareness Month, or DEEM, was first proclaimed in Canada in 2010 by the province of Manitoba. Saskatchewan followed suit in 2011, and British Columbia and all other provinces secured proclamations in ensuing years. Since then, employment service providers, employers, and community organizations throughout Canada have brought DEEM to life by organizing activities to engage employers, job seekers experiencing disability, and the public to promote the benefits of inclusive hiring. And one of the ways to do this is to visit your community's council. So thank you again for the opportunity. From my perspective of boots on the ground, our team has met with Ms. Neal and had a lovely opportunity to connect as to how Kootenay Employment Services can partner to further assist the City of Fernie in inclusive hiring. The scope of what has already been introduced at this local level by this municipal and regional team is to be applauded through the accessibility plan. Okay. 1 in 5 working age Canadians experience some form of disability, which equates to 21% or 3.2 million people. Proportionally for Fernie, this means that according to the 2021 census, of the 6,320 persons in Fernie, possibility of 1,327 people in our community might have a disability. In 2024, the employment rate of persons experiencing a disability was 46.4%, and that of persons without a disability was 66.2%, which is a difference of 19.8 percentage points and is significant. More than 741,000 working age persons in Canada experiencing a disability have potential for paid employment in a fully inclusive labor market. With recent news of multinational corporations choosing to drop or shelve their diversity, inclusion, and equity commitments, it's even more imperative to have employers understand and champion inclusive initiatives and practices. Benefits to hiring inclusively demonstrate that there is a proven reduction in absenteeism, a proven improvement for safety ratings, proven innovation among workers, and lastly, a proven reduction in employee turnover. Workers who identify as having a disability want to work. They want to contribute and show up because they really want to be there. Safety ratings improve because workers have a forced awareness of their surroundings and are innovative in their problem solving with creative solutions. To provide a snapshot of what this means in real terms, when it comes to employee turnover, the average cost of recruiting, training, and hiring is about $4,000 an employee. And the standard turnover in a fast food restaurant is 120%. Let's compare that to businesses that hire inclusively and see a 40% turnover in their staff. That's truly significant. For the sake of easy math, an employer with 10 staff that sees 120% turnover means they'll hire 12 people in a year. That's a $48,000 expense for the employer, contrasted to an employer who has 40% turnover. That's 4 employees and a cost of $16,000 and a savings of $32,000 annually for that employer. So factor in the savings of time and energy, staff morale, and other intangibles. Take an employer with 100 employees and add a few zeros. See how quickly that adds up. Employers still need to ensure that they're hiring for the position and that any employee hired can do the job. Inclusion is about fostering a culture of change within a business. At the end of the day, the tone and intent has to be sincere. The result is that productivity goes up, morale goes up, and the bottom line also grows. If 21% of Canadians experience some form of disability, factor in friends, family, supporters, neighbors, and you reach 73% of all Canadians who know a person with a disability. If your business hires inclusively, customers want to be part of supporting that business because they see their own ones represented in that equation. And that right there is what builds community. The accessibility plan is a beautiful living document that has been thoughtfully and thoroughly designed. The community architects of this document are to be congratulated for the shared regional commitment to mindfully create truly accessible communities. I have a little video to share with you, and hopefully it'll play. It won't take very long, I promise. I know you're busy. Is it playing? Is there sound? There's no sound.
Oops.
We get sound. I haven't done this before.
We. There we go. And share sound. And that. This should. I don't need annotation.
The baker had Simone, and everybody saw that she could do the job. The lawyer went to the baker and saw Simone at work. The lawyer hired John because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The dentist went to the lawyer and saw John at work. The dentist hired Sophia because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The farmer went to the dentist and saw Sophia at work. The farmer hired Kate because the dentist hired Sophia, because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The barber went to the farmer and saw Kate at work. The barber hired Paul because the farmer hired Kate, because the dentist hired Sophia, because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The baker went to the barber and saw Paul at work. He didn't have a clue, but it was thanks to his first move that the barber hired Paul, because the farmer hired Kate, because the dentist hired Sophia, because the lawyer hired John, because the baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. The baker hired Simone. Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you. There we go. Okay, and then go back to my. Should be able to just, there we go. Okay, thank you. A little levity for you this evening. Sometimes it just takes a small spark to create some magic. I would like to leave you with this. There are many resources available through Kootenai Employment Services, as well as the other agencies that we work collaboratively with. And one that would benefit the city, and particularly those businesses with a tourism focus, is a free tourism accessibility clinic with a focus on recruitment and retention. Additionally, we can provide connection for a speaker series with a lens on accountability of accessibility in the workplace. As part of the accessibility plan, Kootenai Employment Services is happy to collaborate in providing training options as part of the action plan for employment and training as outlined in this plan. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank
Any questions from council? Seeing none, very much appreciate your
Okay.
presentation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendation that council return to the regular meeting. Thank you, Councillor McIsaac and Councillor Hamilton seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Moves us along to item 10.1, municipal ticket information bylaw, report from the manager planning. Mr. Semolini, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am just waiting. There we go. And we are sharing. There's a lot of windows open there. Thanks again, Your Worship and Council. Very brief presentation tonight on the municipal ticket information bylaw number 2358. Over the last year, our council has adopted two very important bylaws, one being the subdivision development servicing bylaw, and the other one being the building and plumbing bylaw. We're currently utilizing those bylaws to the best of our abilities. However, when there are violations of those bylaws that should result in a municipal ticket to be issued, such as building without a permit, for example, our MTI bylaw did not actually have the link to the new bylaw numbers. So quite simply, all we did for now is went in and updated that municipal ticket information bylaw to refer back to the new bylaws rather than the old ones. That gives us the ability to then issue tickets for those violations. So really all I'm hoping for tonight is first, second, and third reading of the bylaw, which is largely housekeeping. And just to let council know that we will be looking at the municipal ticket information bylaw at a larger scale to look at some of the fine amounts and things, improving the bylaw on a larger scale in the future. The reason that isn't coming forward tonight is purely just a capacity issue for us to be able to get it forward.
And do you have a sense when it will come in the future, Mr.
It's on the list of things to do, Your Worship. But again, capacity is always fluctuating, and so are priorities. But I'm hoping to work on that throughout the winter and bring something forward in 2026. However, it does go beyond just our department as well. So there is a little bit of collaboration that needs to happen there.
Thank you. Councillor Ramirez. Okay. Councillor Shoesmith.
You're telling me right now, if I started building without a permit, you couldn't ticket me, right?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Shoesmith, actually the building and plumbing bylaw does have some built-in sort of fines. For example, if you build without a permit, then when you go to get your permit is going to cost double.
Oh.
So there are some things in there, but just that immediate fine, yeah, that's correct.
Well, I had my hopes up. I'll second Councillor Ramadas's motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, Mr. Simulini. I think you're up next as well. Land use application procedures and fees bylaw.
Let's see if I can make the screen share a little more.
Before you share.
Yep.
If I can see this for a sec. Thank you. I'm just going to close that one. Done. And which one is you now? Which one? That. Done.
Good, perfect.
There.
It wasn't a problem with me finding it. There just seemed to be a really big lag there. I don't know what the. There we go. Next on the list, council, is the land use application procedures and fees bylaw. It's bylaw number 2358. You may remember back in, I believe it was April, we came for, no, April or June? April, May, June, somewhere in that. We came forward with this bylaw to committee of the whole. We workshopped it with council, went over some of the features of it, and
it was June 17th.
June 17th. Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome.
And as a result of that, we took the bylaw back with what we had learned from council at the workshop, and then went through legal counsel and made sure that all of the parts of the bylaw were tying into legislation and everything was accurate. And we've brought it back again tonight for first, second, and third reading. There were, again, some major improvements over our old bylaw. And most of those improvements are brought on as the fact that the other bylaw was quite dated. And so, I mean, lots of up-to-date things with the new legislation, for example, delegation of development variance permits, and when we require public hearings and those types of things. Also, probably the most important feature here is the fee update. Similar to the building bylaw that I spoke about earlier, the new fees in this bylaw compensate for the services rendered. So The idea being that the developer who applies for a permit would pay for the staff's time to process that permit, as opposed to the permit processing being subsidized by the taxpayer. It is quite an overhaul of the bylaw. It does look at several different items. It looks at minor and major variances, for example, where a minor variance is one that is delegated to staff and a major variance is one that goes to council. Different fees for those because different amounts of time and staff time, council time are spent on them. It also breaks down certain applications to be complex or non-complex. For example, a rezoning of a single property might be much more simple than a rezoning for an entire area that's going to be subdivided and developed in the future. There again, as I noted, there are some updated processes. One of the strange things about our previous bylaw is it didn't really draw a clear line between the process for bylaws, like zoning bylaws, and development variance permits. So we historically had followed almost the same procedure, where we didn't necessarily hold a public hearing for a development variance permit, but we did do, council would approve the application, and then staff would notify the public, and then the item would come back to council again. This new bylaw actually allows us to notify the public that we are going to be bringing it forward to council, and then bring the variance forward to council to be authorized for issuance. Again, it's not a really common occurrence anymore. We do see way more minor variances, meaning that staff is delegated to issue them. But it does take a little bit of the red tape away from development variance permits that do need to come to council. Again, touching on the fees, our planning team did a really good job of going through and logging some hours and trying to figure out how much time is spent on each type of application, multiplying that by the hourly wage of the employees that were working on that, and then come forward with some fees. Fairly strong average. There are some that are obviously going to be a little bit more than others, but at the end of the day, it should average out to about the same. Also, clarification on permit expiration, as in when you get a permit, if you haven't commenced work for a certain time, that permit will expire, meaning that if you get a permit under a certain bylaw and then you don't do that work and then that bylaw changes or the regulations change, then you have to reapply for that permit to ensure that the work that you do conforms to the new bylaws. Another really important point that we had talked about at Committee of the Whole was
sorry, Mr. Similini, just thinking about what you last said. So if somebody gets a permit and it hasn't expired and the regulation changed, are they grandfathered in that circumstance? If you see what I'm asking. So you sort of painted a picture where somebody gets a permit, it expires, the regulation changes, now they have to get another, they have to get a renewed permit. That makes perfect sense. If somebody gets a permit, the regulation changes while that permit is still valid and they potentially haven't started the work, but it remains valid. Are they now beholden to the new regulation or the existing regulation at the time of permit?
Good question, Your Worship. It would fall under the previous regulation.
I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Complex applications. We have seen some applications that come forward and they do take up a lot of staff time. That is extraordinary compared to what we would anticipate with our fees. This bylaw allows us to reach out to the applicant and have them pay for either additional staff time, or allows us to potentially go to a third party and have them help us out with the file as well, and then charge back to the applicant. And I think a really important point, the second point on this slide, is the pre-application conference. Up until now, we haven't had a formal procedure for pre-application conferences. And I think that having a pre-application conference or pre-application meetings, especially for major projects, really helps to get them off on the right foot. It helps the developer or the landowner to understand what's required of them as far as multiple permits that they may need to get. Like if they're in the floodplain or in a slope, they do need to get hazard lands development permits. Lots of times we speak about incomplete applications and what we see, and lots of times those are tied to other things that the applicant wasn't necessarily aware of or thought that they could sort of jump those and do those later. So the pre-application conference really allows us to lay out that map to from the start to the finish of the process. We have done a few of them informally recently, and it's really helped to get the project off on the right foot. So formalizing that process will help even more.
And is there a threshold for pre-application conference, like in terms of complexity?
Your worship, what we'll do is we'll look at them on a sort of one-off basis. Like if someone applies for one, we're not necessarily going to take their money and then not have a pre-application conference.
No, fair enough.
But if somebody wants to do a pre-application conference and all of the material or everything they need to do is fairly straightforward and online, we can just supply them the materials to do the research for themselves and come forward with an application. And then if there's a certain amount of leeway when somebody does make an application, we can help them out. This isn't like a strictly, we take your application and we look at it and throw it away if it's no good. But if somebody does come forward with something that's simple, again, we can point them in the right direction and hopefully they can then put that application together. But if they're still struggling, we can help them out as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that sort of discretion, your way you framed it with a certain amount of discretion, because, and I can imagine in some circumstances you get inquiries from mom and pop who want to build a deck and potentially doesn't require a pre-application conference, but they do require additional information.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship, and full credit to our planning team who have in the last year, I know we've talked about it a little bit before, have updated our website with a lot of fresh information. So there's a lot more information out there now and it's easier to find. So
thank you.
We're relying on that quite a bit as well.
I appreciate that. Thanks. Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have a comment and question. Like it was, as you know, Director, most of our building community and construction folks and even our citizens, they've never been against fair fee structure. It was always around the certainty of their application, right? When am I putting in? When is it coming out? Like that that has always been our challenge. I appreciate that the building quarterly report will come sometime soon, but how are we making out on those backlogs that we were talking about back in spring? Have we reduced the numbers? Like it was, 31 applications or something when I last remember. Has that shrunk? How are we progressing on with our increased resources in planning department? What's the backlog now? Is the trajectory going down? Is it staying the same or is it becoming more complicated? Just want to get some insight on that.
Through to Councillor Ramirez, I can get you some more solid numbers at a future report. The quarterly report is a good example of how we can bring that forward. What I can say is we're fully onboarded with Cloud Permit now and doing that work. We do have 2 casual building officials in training, which obviously a little bit of a learning curve with a new position like that and training people. So anytime there's a change in technology or we opt to train somebody, we're actually taking capacity away from our more qualified individuals to help to train them. But those building officials have taken steps to become full building official level 1s as well. So they have started to look at permits, and even if they can't issue permits, they've been doing certain things that they are qualified to do in order to sort of take certain aspects of that permit review out of it. For example, one of our building officials is an experienced energy advisor, so he's able to actually look at the energy reports and sort of check that box. So then when the file was opened by the building official, they're able to not have to worry about that aspect. So there are certain things that we've done to change it. That being said, the demand on the department was still great, and every day I look at my email and I have new applications coming across every day. So to say that the queue has gotten smaller, I don't know if it has or not, just because the demand hasn't shrunk. Like the amount of applications coming through the door has probably increased since we spoke about it last. But I think we do have the tools to start to handle a little bit better.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. A bit of a comment and a question to Manager Stellini. First of all, thank you very much to staff for the hard work on this. I think we need to really be cognizant and let the public know that modernizing our fees is a good thing. It's from you draw attention to that in the report, and I just wanted to highlight it, that updated fees should reduce the pressure on taxpayers to pay for staff time spent on private development. I'd also like to point out that those fees can then be looked at to be possibly reinvested into the department in order to get the staff capacity to meet the demand. Because another thing that I have understood happens to us frequently, and it's just life, it's the way things are. People do move and move on. So we're not necessarily always at a full staff complement, Your Worship, right? So that's something that if we have the ability in the future to possibly have maybe a little bit extra staff, then we mitigate those risks and potentially get those permits out faster, right? Because more hands, lighter work, as the saying goes, right? And I think those are all steps towards modernizing. So I'm really thankful that staff has spent time on these things because I think we've discussed it around the table, and planning is one of the economic drivers of our community, and it's important. We've certainly heard loud and clear that you know, the community is looking for us to improve there, and this is one of the ways that we can facilitate that. So thank you.
Mr. Barnowski.
To Councillor Ramadas's comments or questions, we have about 45 building permit, plumbing permit, demo permit, fire, wood stove permits in the queue right now, and about a 12-week, represents about a 12-week backlog. So we're reviewing the very end of June applications now, about 12 weeks ago, into July. And so we have seen just really continued demand. The leadership team has been working for the last couple of weeks during our weekly leadership meetings around council guidelines and pre-budget prep, and you'll see recommendations specifically on like the impacts of increased development pressures, options, and potential guidelines for a council to consider, including our fee revenues reinvested in that department or in turnaround times, and do we want to set specific performance targets as budget guidelines and then budget towards those. So some mix of that you'll see as we prepare that and then get a little more information to council before going to the public for some consultation on early guidelines as well.
Thank you.
And further to Mr. Bronowski's comments as well, the latest steps we have taken is we've like last week we ordered the Marshall Swift price guide, which actually gives us a uniform price per square foot of a build. So that allows us to make when someone applies for a permit, rather than having any sort of debate with that individual as to our interpretation of what the build is worth versus what their interpretation is. It just takes that out of it. So, I mean, that doesn't take a lot of time off of staff, but I mean, if you think about, you email somebody a quote for their permit and they say, well, I don't think that should be it. Well, then that's half an hour, however long it takes to get through that. And then secondly, we're currently going through the process of ordering Bluebeam software, which is a permit review software. Cloud Permit is sort of the permit issuance software. Bluebeam is the software that you'd actually open building plans in and leave your comments on and things like that as a building official. It's custom made for that. So it's much more efficient than, say, the Adobe Pro program that we have now. So looking at implementing that as well. And we were lucky enough to have one of our casual building officials has a lot of experience with that program as well. So in twist of irony, the trainee will be the trainer on that one. So.
And does Bluebeam speak to Cloud Permit, so to speak?
I don't think that Bluebeam speaks directly to Cloud Permit, but what you would do is you would upload the plans into Bluebeam, comment, and then upload them back into Cloud Permit or into the permit program. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to move on, as part of the workshop with council, we did talk about some public engagement. So over the last few weeks, we have engaged the public. As noted in the Committee of the Whole report, we did email out to the building community, the Canadian Home Builders Association, and the Fernie Chamber of Commerce. We've advertised in the free press, created summaries on our webpage, and our building officials have and our planners have provided informal notice through conversation with applicants. We haven't received any public feedback. So our recommendation tonight is that council give first, second, and third readings to the bylaw. I do want to note that we talked about cloud permit a little bit. This bylaw is being amended in synchronization with our ongoing implementation of the development permit side of cloud permit. So the building permit side is already implemented. Our next step is with the development permit side. So this will fit in with how that program is being configured.
Thank you, Mr. Simile. Any further questions from council? Seeing none, I'll ask our corporate officer actually to read the recommendation. Surprise.
Staff recommendation is that the land use application procedures fees bylaw number 2530/2025 be given first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any further discussion? Councillor Revenus?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just wanted to follow up on CAO's comment, and both the director and CAO's comment there. We've increased our capacity, like, we've added bodies into our planning department with our casual and, folks in those roles. We have implemented cloud permit. The demand for the services has increased, which is a good thing. We should be celebrating that. That's great that there's more economic development happening in the town. That's something to be celebrated. But in order for us to come back to, your only a handful of backlog and not this 45 number of backlog in the future, like what needs to change? Do we have to hire more? Like, is that what you're proposing?
Your Worship, we're going to need more people. We're going to need more resources. We're going to need more time. Absolutely. The demand outpaces 2 building officials and 2 very part-time casual building officials in training. Absolutely. You're going to need a couple more building officials probably to keep up with demand. You're going to need maybe a planner to keep up with that demand. And my other comment on that is when we start to get into budget and you look at your next quarterly financial reporting, you'll see what the development and building permit revenues are for multifamily and dense development compared to single family. And while those are complex and take more time, you do have opportunities to rely on technical professionals and qualified professionals in those. So the demand is different, although it's more sophisticated, it's different. But the revenues are exponentially greater than they are for single family housing. And so all of a sudden, you start to see revenues that can offset that increase in capacity. But yeah, absolutely. When we look at the demand in Fernie compared to the demand elsewhere with similar size departments, what I'm finding is, you have the cities who are doing those 24, 48, 2-week turnaround times, also have plan checkers, also have dedicated planners. They have a development services division that's separate and distinct from policy planning or official community planning. So those people aren't distracted in between 2 realms, and it's more people and more time.
Councillor Shoesmith?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. My read talking to people in the community and such is people are largely fine with the fees and costs provided that an efficient and predictable service is returned. And I think that, moving forward, user pay type of thing, I mean, we got to build up that department and get those things moving quickly, and that should be funded by the fees that they levy. Thank you.
Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you. I mean, I do also want to caution, we understand that livability and affordability are council endorsed values in your strategic plan and our guiding principles that we try to embody. And so we look at what are our total fees on an application and work really hard trying not to make housing unaffordable by way of trying to recuperate costs unfairly. And so we're simply trying to get to a point where your residential taxpayers aren't significantly funding the cost of each application and getting to a fair and equitable balance. If you've watched the news, that's, the stories of Surrey developments slowing down and the numbers of $60,000 a door when you look at fees and DCCs, we're pretty far from there in Fernie, BC, and we'd like to keep it keep it that way, responsible and not punitive.
Councillor Hamilton?
Since we're on this topic, I just had a quick question about, when we're comparing our our building development staffing levels, are we picking communities that have a population comparator or a permit value, permit volume comparators? And just, but as a concrete example, at UBCM 2 weeks ago, Williams Lake last year didn't issue a single building permit because there was no demand, but their population is almost double ours. So, I'm just, if we're trying to compare our staffing levels and our resourcing to communities with similar population, I think that's probably a bit of a not a valid comparator, as opposed to making sure that we're looking at communities that have similar permit requirements.
Mr. Similini?
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hamilton, fair point, and I think there's more factors there beyond just population and number of permits too. I mean, we're functioning in a system that we've admitted is largely broken, right? And what system are those other municipalities functioning with? Have they had cloud permit implemented for years? What's the culture like in that town as far as the amount of information that's provided to builders so they know how to make a complete application, those types of things, right? So we still are dealing with we don't want to call them incomplete applications, but applications that take some work, right? That's not the only reason, and I've said it many times before, that a large reason why those come in incomplete is because the information isn't necessarily there for the applicant to know what they need to provide, right? So we're working really hard to change that system, and I think that that change is difficult, especially when you're fighting a battle every day to try to get permits out the door, right? You're so busy trying to issue permits that you don't have the time or the capacity to actually change the broken system that you're working in, right? So I do think that it is hard to compare, because someone could say that a certain municipality is outpacing us as far as permits go, and that's fair. But again, what are the quality of the permits? What system are the people that are working there working within, and things like that? So I don't know if there'll ever be a fair comparison.
Mr. Bornowski?
I do. I think we have to find better comparators than just looking up and down the road, because we have to figure out who's got a similar building typology and a similar landscape of bylaws and volume. But also, we're really pleased to be working with the Canadian Home Builders Association of the Central Interior. Manager Similini has a meeting later this month with them. I'm meeting with them in early November, and just continually working with information they're bringing forward as ways we can improve our communication, material out, and our processes, and discussing what ways we can engage with the sector on a sector to city basis overall. So,
thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify that I heard CAO correctly, and I wanted to say that I believe Councillor Shoesmith pointed out the feedback I'm also getting is a clear set of service standards. So CAO, I think I heard you say that you will be bringing us some options during budget discussions that look at those types of things.
We'll be bringing you some guidelines around what we want to do with our service level and how we might want to fund it.
Right, because that goes hand in hand, right? If we're going to set X as a service standard, then we need capacity to meet X.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, Councillor Kelly, and that's one thing that our department has never, we've never had an actual set level of service, right? Like there's never been in 6 weeks or a week or 2 days. Like that's never, it's just always been, we just deal with it as fast as we can handle it, right? So if we set that level of service, that allows us to work backwards, look at how much money we have coming in and how we can staff up and tool up to meet that level of service.
And presumably that would include surge capacity, where if we see a spike, we would go to outside providers and enlist them.
Yeah, if required, and conversely, in slow times, we have lots of work for our people as well, right?
Yeah.
That if we're not issuing as many permits, there's again that the policy work and that sort of stuff all needs to happen as well.
Thank you, Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Just a bit of frame for this discussion, I suppose. It's one of council's values to try and engender some affordability in things. And we're talking about, the increased cost of growing the relevant departments or possibly growing those relevant departments. I should point out that you either catch it or coming or going. The cost is borne by somebody. And so the question of affordability for who actually is pertinent. And when it's borne by the taxpayer in general, because it will be borne by somebody, yes, that makes it cheaper to create a building or to develop something, but it doesn't lower the cost of living because that lands on the taxpayer who owns the property down the road. And so you wind up with existing people paying to, in a sense, subsidize the building of newer people. And, the cost of something, in a way, that's a communication. That's like a language. When the costs are high, it says there's a lot of things that need to be done to make this happen. There's a lot of negative externalities. And by putting that from the person who wants to build onto the back of the existing taxpayer, we're driving up the cost for people who are living here, existing here, families, and what have you, and driving down the cost for people who are coming here newly. And that's not a moral judgment or an opinion on one person's better than the other. It's just we should keep that in mind as we have this discussion, because trying to lower the cost of building in order to lower the cost of housing doesn't really do that. It lowers it for a specific group of people for a length of time, which is when they're building new. I just wanted to get that into the discussion and as sort of a lens to view this. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Ramirez?
Hard to follow up after that, Your Worship. I have a very more mundane question here. When is the DCC update coming through? Can't remember.
I'm going to have to get back to you. Off the top of my head, I don't know where it's sitting in sequence with our master plans, but I will get that information right back to council.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simling. Item 10.3, permissive tax exemption policy and bylaw. A report from our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Good evening, Council. Tonight I am talking about permissive tax exemptions. This last came before Council in June and September and is now back before Council with the bylaw for initial readings. The recommendation in your report specific to the approval of the new policy has changed, but I will explain what I mean by that shortly. Council has seen this slide a few times explaining what exactly a permissive tax exemption is, but essentially there's two types of exemptions defined in the community charter: statutory and permissive exemptions. Statutory exemptions are automatic and permissive exemptions can be granted by council. There's a few examples of properties in Fernie that receive both types of exemptions listed on the screen here. But again, tonight we're only talking about permissive exemptions. And so first order of business tonight is the new permissive tax exemption, or PTE policy. The current policy dates back to 2015. It's very brief, doesn't appear to actually be approved by council, doesn't have information like how to apply, due dates, what criteria you have to meet, and so on. So in your agenda is a proposed policy that would be for council approval, with one change. Last meeting, Mayor Milligan asked about one sentence in particular that didn't make any sense, and I looked into it after, and it was an accidental copy and paste mistake that I must have made getting it ready for the agenda, so that's been fixed. I also made the mistake of not taking proper notes during September's council meeting and missed adding a clause based on some council feedback at the September meeting. Councillor McIsaac specifically wanted some language around the onus being on the applicant to inform the city if there are changes to the use of their property and what the consequences of not doing that could be. And I did not get that added into the policy in your agenda, so I only noticed this today, and I discussed with Ms. McElwee, and we agreed that the least confusing way to proceed would be to bring it back for approval when the bylaw comes back for adoption later this month with that added language. The second item to discuss is the current bylaw that was adopted for taxation year 2016, therefore expires in 2025. So the new bylaw is for council's consideration tonight. This on your screen here is a list of properties on the bylaw in no particular order. The total amount of property tax that's exempted for all these properties is approximately $234,000. That's about $61 annually for the average single-family house in Fernie. It's worth noting that if an exemption is removed, the money that the property would have to pay in taxes is not net new revenue for the city. It just means that every other property in town would have to pay a little less. Some changes since the last meeting in September. I said at that time that I was missing 3 applications, and I now have all of those applications, so they are in council's agenda package for this meeting. The previous bylaw was for a 10-year period, which is the maximum. Based on feedback from council at the meeting in September, the new bylaw before council tonight is set to expire in 3 years, so it's for taxation years 2026, 27, 28. It'll come back to council every year for a review, but reapplications for current recipients won't be required every year. And then the only change identified as a result of this reapplication process this year is there's some different wording specifically around the Salvation Army and the portion of its property that it rents out to a private business. I have been in contact with Major Robbins, and I've let him know what the process is with receiving their notice of assessment from BC Assessment and what he should do to make sure it's reflected fairly on that notice. And so, fairly brief presentation, but staff recommendation tonight is a little different than the recommendation in the agenda package. It's just to give initial 3 readings to the bylaw, which is due to BC Assessment by the end of October. And again, the policy will come back for council approval when this bylaw returns for adoption later this month. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Any questions? Councillor Shoesmith.
I know we discussed this previously, and I've forgotten why. Why are we going? Why were we going with the 3 years as opposed to 4?
That was an idea from Councillor Adia Kelly. One of the documents that applicants have to submit is their financial statements for the last 3 years, and so that was one of the reasons for keeping it to 3.
Councillor Ramirez.
Just the arithmetic of that makes it a little awkward, Your Worship. What happens is at the end of the 4th term, you will have a situation where an inaugurated council has to make a decision on this without knowing anything. They'll have to look at permissive tax. And in another case, you might actually have a single council doing 2 decisions in its one single term. Just the way it's the least common multiple of 3 and 4. If someone is interested to do the puzzle on that. So I think to make that a little more clean and convenient, I'd rather prefer that it happens, let's say, 2nd year of a term. That keeps it pretty simple. Once every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years, 2nd year of the term. That way, a council that is like well established can make a informed decision on that, and it doesn't get you into this awkward situation where a same council does it twice, another council does it once at the very start of their term, and things like that.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. The only pushback I would have on that is it's not going to happen at the very start of any term. They're going to have been in office at least 10 months because it's due at the end of October. So they'll be 11 months because they'll have been inaugurated, sworn in November and of that first year. And so.
And you see it every year, whether it's renewed that year or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, this isn't the only decision that you have to make as soon as you're sworn in. So.
Yeah. No, fair comment. Councillor Adia Kelly.
Yeah, just to clarify, I had suggested it to Director Burdett because of that 3-year application to just try and match it up. Previously, we were going 10 years.
Yeah.
So I guess some councils didn't see it at all.
Yeah. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, given that reasoning, the 3-year is just fine by me. I just was thinking more in terms of as it relates to elections and, you know, the pressures everybody feels. If, you know, imagine you're about to go into an election and the permissive tax exemption thing comes up, like everybody's going to be trying to lever you and stuff, right? I mean, it's whoever's going to sit in the chair is going to be susceptible to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
Just candidly, I had a conversation on Saturday evening with someone who was here to present for the permissive tax exemption presentations, and she was really grateful for the opportunity, one, to present to council, and two, to see what all those other community groups were doing. And her feedback was 3 years makes perfect sense for her, because a lot of that stuff gets lost in the weeds and people don't know what's happening in the community. Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you. I was helpfully reminded by Ms. Rhodes that a number of our employees, herself primarily, have done a lot of, and our corporate officer among others, but have done research on current best practices, and that the 3 years matches the notice requirements in the community charter around council also having to provide an estimate of the amount of taxes that would be imposed on the property if it were not exempt for that year, as well as the following 2 years as required by legislation. So that it just sort of matches the amount that you're meant to quote moving forward. So it's considered best practice, but I do understand councils may wish to not have that in their first year. This current bylaw would be 3 years, so the next major reconsideration would not be within a council's first year again.
Thank you. Would you mind reading the resolution?
Staff recommendation is that permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2537/2025 be given first, second and third readings.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I just one question that I wanted to ask, and that is with regards specifically to the comments about the Catholic Church and parking. Are we providing any direction to them with regards to their application, including parking, when it has been denied repeatedly, or are we just going to wait, let that go through, and let BC Assessment do the
Be the villain.
Be the villain.
Mr. Burdett.
I mean, I've had similar conversations with them like I did with Major Rick Robbins, informing them what the process would have to be for them come January, February when they get their assessment, and the process to appeal that would be. Parking is pretty strictly prohibited. So I don't know, there's a couple parcels that are definitely used mainly for parking, and I suspect that's the reason why. But as for the garden that is for sale, I don't know the reason why BC Assessment denied that. So the worst, you know, their only option is to go through the appeal, and the worst that could happen is it remains denied, but there is an option there for them.
So they're aware. Yeah.
Follow up, if I may?
Yeah, please.
I wonder if, considering that BC Assessment specifically does not support permissive tax exemptions for parking, should our bylaw in support of it reflect that? In other words, should we just announce, yeah, we're not going to support permissive tax exemptions for parking spaces? It's got to be for buildings that are for the purpose of the society or whatever the case, or church or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that worth having a discussion?
Mr. Burdett, any thoughts?
I mean, I'm only speculating that that's the reason. And their application did include those 3 lots, and so it's being presented to BC Assessment as lands surrounding. And I do have some language around parking in the policy, but
you do.
You know, I don't have a great answer for you. It's outside of my realm of expertise, I guess, to make that determination whether these lots are for parking. I'm just kind of presenting the lots that they've applied for as the lands surrounding their church.
And I'm curious, Mr. Burdett, sorry, whether Are any of the other applicants, other churches being, or the Salvation Army for that matter, being denied, applying for and being denied the parking as well? Or is it strictly that one that you're aware of?
It's strictly that one, and other churches have parking lots. So I'm not. Again, I don't know why they're denying those 3 lots on Fifth Ave there.
Yeah, nor do I. Although I suspect it's, and again, it would be speculating. It wasn't even parking any longer. It was a community garden. Yeah. With that in mind, I will call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Good discussion. Item 11.3, which has been moved to the top of the business section to, in deference to our folks who've waited very patiently for this item and been very well behaved, I will say.
I bet they're going to be coming to a lot.
Item 11.3, the Mount Fernie Park Road Intersection Agreement. Report from our Director of Engineering and Public Works. Welcome back, Ms. Wirt.
My next presentation tonight is on the proposed cost-sharing agreement from the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, MOT, to facilitate potential future Highway 3 and Mount Fernie Park Road intersection improvements. So over the last approximately 9 years, past City Council and local residents have put significant effort and advocacy to the provincial government for an improved intersection at Mount Fernie Park Road and Riverside Way intersection with Highway 3. MOT did complete a review of the highway function in the area and traffic counts in 2019, and then they did preliminary design of a roundabout in 2021. And our understanding is that once the cost to build the roundabout were estimated, the price resulted in them no longer pursuing that form of improvement and instead looking for alternative options for more cost-effective solutions to address the city's concerns with the intersection functionality. In 2024, MOT worked on a preliminary design of an alternative and reduced scope traffic control project, resulting in the design of signalization for the intersection. MOT staff indicate to us, as attached in the agenda package, that this project was moved up the capital project list because of a request initiated by the City of Fernie and not due to highway through fare functionality. Ultimately, the intersection would eventually require replacement by MOT, but on a significantly longer time frame than was requested by the City of Fernie. The traffic volume data that we do have available shows that the function of the through traffic lanes on Highway 3 meets the ministry's defined requirements, but levels of service at Mount Fernie Park Road for left turning eastbound fall to an unacceptable level of service F beyond the addition of phase 8. And I apologize, in reading my report, I saw it said acceptable level of service F. Staff do believe that the traffic volumes are increasing beyond the data that we have available to us that's now several years old and continuing to cause the function of the intersection to decrease further. The relevant traffic studies applied a 2.2% inflationary increase of traffic over the last 5 years. So we don't have recent traffic counts to confirm whether that's accurate or not. As you heard at the public this evening, staff have received written concerns from residents of the Cedars neighborhood with respect to the functionality and safety of the intersection. The shared concerns presented were the increasing traffic volume, the left turn delays from Mount Fernie Park Road onto Highway 3, potential for accidents and near misses that had been witnessed, the high volume of pedestrian and cyclist use in the area based on the new Fernie Valley pathway, and the desire for connectivity for pedestrians trying to cross between the neighborhoods and access amenities. We have also received occasional requests for improvements from the Riverside area residents who also have expressed concern about safety at the intersection and the next intersection west of that as well, Van Lerberg Road. So there is a known community desire for improvements to the highway corridor and pedestrian cyclist use, and it is documented in the city's previous or current official community plan. So Mott staff have confirmed that the existing commitment of funds for the detailed engineering design is contingent upon confirmation that this matter is a priority from the municipality and formal support from the municipality to proceed in executing a cost sharing agreement such as the one that was attached to tonight's report. And if provided, the ministry would fund the design to the 100% mark, so kind of the issued for tender revisions. And they are seeking formal support on that path forward and cost sharing of the improvements. Like I mentioned, they've completed the preliminary design of the signalization that has some stoplights and lane and pedestrian improvements for the intersection. And they drafted the attached cost sharing agreement for the city to consider. And they have indicated that unless the city is willing to share in the construction of these intersection improvements, the project is going to fall off their capital project list, essentially. The potential contribution by the city is not insignificant. It has been previously indicated by Mott that a 50-50 split is a typical starting point for negotiation of this type of improvement. And then that some of the factors outlined in their cost sharing agreement will be used to negotiate an equitable distribution of the funds. So trying to further quantify and understand the provincial impacts, municipal impacts, and other impacts, which is the ones you've been you heard mentioned, such as Provincial Park, Nordic Center, Island Lake Lodge, and the adjacent residential growth in the RDEK. And then there is the existing covenant on the title of the remaining Cedars development property that will require them to contribute a portion of the cost should the upgrade proceed. And as we heard in the IICP presentation, the city's current contribution to our transportation reserve annually is $700,000. So should it proceed, it is very likely that more than a year of our road rehabilitation projects would need to be held back to fund this improvement unless some alternative funding strategy was utilized. And so staff agree that improvements to the intersection would be beneficial to its users of all modes. And while Mount Fernie Park Road is a city of Fernie Street, and some of the traffic is driven by development of the Cedars, which we've approved, we agree that much of the traffic is driven by provincial and regional users and tourists that are accessing those amenities up the road. We feel that leveraging the current provincial support and momentum for the improvement is advisable if council determines that this intersection is a high and near-term priority in comparison to our other roads projects. And at this juncture, advancing the project doesn't commit the city to any specific expense. Rather, it provides prioritization to the project and directs us to attempt to negotiate a funding agreement for council's consideration while the ministry completes the detailed design.
Thank you, Ms. Weir. Questions from council? Councilor Schusman.
That covenant that we have with the development across the street there, is that time sensitive in any way? Like, are we risking things if this gets kicked down the road here?
Mayor, through to council, the covenant doesn't have a time frame, but it does have unit count, like traffic impact data that would be tied to it being completed. So should the development pause and not reach those traffic counts, I suppose it has some uncertainty in that way.
Right, so that money could wind up not being on the table under certain circumstances.
If development
Or
paused
parts
as
of
it
it.
is right now, it wouldn't be required because the traffic impact assessments we have say that the intersection functionality is fine for the Cedars at the current level. So it's on title for future development, but we have obviously no control over when that development reaches those trigger points.
Okay, follow up if I may. So if we were to fund this now, and then it reached that threshold, would we be able to recoup that money later?
I may have to get back to you on the language of the covenant. I don't have it in front of me. My understanding is that it's pretty like they shall contribute.
Yeah, okay.
Like it's pretty explicitly and requires, approval for discharge from the city and the ministry, and seems
Okay.
pretty bulletproof that they would contribute the 15% of the costs.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
thank you.
they have indicated that they want us to get on with this because they would like to discharge that covenant as soon as possible. Mr. Bornowski, did you have a comment?
I would just reinforce what you're saying and
Yeah.
what Ms. Weir is saying. Yeah, I think the language is quite clear. It is up to 50%, up to a total of 15%. So it's, percent over percent, but it's there and there's interest in completing the work or being done with it, having
Yeah.
certainty on what that cost is.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Weir, can you sort of restate what you said in terms of the, this cost sharing agreement doesn't actually commit us to a cost?
Correct. It just, they do want, they're looking for a continued prioritization of the project to continue expending funds. I think their letter said they've spent in excess of $1 million on design and studies for this intersection already. And so they are looking for us to show our support for that. We are going to participate in some form of cost sharing to make the improvements happen.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor Ramirez.
Thank you. The report, and we've discussed about the covenant on title for the Cedars development. Do we have any knowledge, institutional knowledge of why something similar wasn't applied on the other side of the highway? Because that's going to impact that intersection just as much as it develops.
Mayor, through to Councillor Hamilton, there were traffic impact assessments completed for the development on the other side. I saw the one for the gas station in particular. And so my understanding, not having those in front of me, but that they have contributed to the cost of those upgrades in terms of building the right in, right out that facilitated the access and exit from the highway. So they did contribute to a point to, based on their traffic impact assumptions.
Further?
Yeah, I guess to be a little bit more specific, not so much the development that has occurred on the other side of the highway, but in the expanded development happening past Riverside, adjacent to Pinnacle Ridge, those future lots that are going to hopefully be developed and hopefully contribute to our community.
So as they are developed, we would have mechanisms to require them to complete additional TIAs that show the impact of the proposed development on the intersection functionality. So I think Derek might be able to comment, but I think the levers would be like if the property rezones, we can ask for a TIA. The official community plan provides some guidance on when we can ask for TIAs. So I think that no, there's nothing on title saying that they're going to contribute, but we have still levers as development progresses to ensure that they model the impacts of the proposed development.
I guess just as a further follow-up, I'm curious if they have to do a traffic impact assessment on an intersection that we've already funded a redevelopment for, they're kind of second mover advantage on that. And if the Cedars has to contribute to expand their development, what levers or mechanisms exist that we can ensure that those future buildings also contribute kind of as a catch-up fund, if you will. And, as we're contemplating the upfront costs now of installing that infrastructure at the detriment to elsewhere in the community, is there a way that we can put a parcel tax or something similar dedicated to road reserve to refund that money that goes
latecomer fee?
Yeah, exactly.
Mayor, through to Councillor Hamilton. It's a great question. I don't have the details of the tools available to us right now, but I know Director Lennox would be a good resource in terms of what we've done in the past, but certainly something we can look at. Did you want to add anything?
Mr. Bornowski?
Certainly, we can cast our minds back to a presentation on developing infrastructure that facilitates future development and latecomer charges or other options and bring that back at the time when we're bringing this kind of a potential cost sharing agreement. I'd like to spend a little bit of time researching that though, because we're not typically considering one developer building excess capacity and then the municipality imposing that latecomer on others.
Yeah, understood. Councillor Ramirez.
I just recall reading it on community charter, Your Worship, that parcel taxes have got such narrow scope that those things are generally not allowed. But I'm no expert, someone in the staff to look into it. Your Worship, if I may, I just have a couple of questions here. I will support this, Director. I think this is a smart way to think about this. You know, there is momentum building from the provincial government, and you know there is no obligation on our end at this point in time to advance this. This is a smart way to proceed with this. However, in light of a couple of comments that we got from our speakers here, and Ms. Ruth made some pretty good points here. You know, the positioning of the speed limit, for example, and the lack of, you know, turn. Those things don't seem to be like a, you know, massive, you know, transportation engineering type of problems. And why I'm saying this is we've had precedent in the past where, you know, on Coal Creek Road, there were people who were wanting to have that stop sign installed, and we as a council made that quick decision. It was like a couple of $1,000s. Let's install a stop sign, and it has been a development for good, and it happened at a pretty low cost. And where I'm going with this is, are there 2 or 3 things that we can do quickly with low cost rather than waiting for this perfect plan to come with the province, with all these traffic studies and all these things? It will take at least a couple of years before we see the end, you know, light at the end of the tunnel. Like, are there tactical things that we can do like quickly that doesn't involve massive millions of dollars or, you know, traffic studies and things like those?
Mayor, through to Councillor Ramadas. Most of the problem area there is within the ministry right of way. And so we don't have jurisdiction over installing signage or adding right turn lanes or widening the highway to accommodate exiting. So I do feel like to actually address the root cause of the problem, it is within the span of control of the ministry, and we would need them to approve. One thing that was mentioned that's a smaller item is lighting at the intersection on Mount Fernie Park Road has been, intended to be installed for several years, but was kind of being tied to this, oh, well, if we're going to upgrade the intersection, why light it in advance of that upgrade in case the lighting then has to be redone? But I would suggest, to me, that's the relatively low cost thing that the municipality could likely make happen on Mount Fernie Park Road to improve safety when it's dark, but I don't have a lot of suggestions for within the ministry right away.
And it, just for my clarity, that is our road to light, or is we own that road now? Okay, thank you. Mr. Bornowski.
Thank you. I'd just like to clarify, as a non-technical person and not responsible in any way for determining whether it's the right decision or not on the highway, agree with the comments about lowering the speed limit and not dealing with acceleration and deceleration around an intersection. That itself would take lobbying and likely a traffic study to prove that it wouldn't slow traffic down or impede the movement of goods through the corridor with the ministry, because they have a very specific mandate. And so it really is out of our zone of control as a mayor and council, unless we want to fully fund it to the satisfaction of the ministry, because the entire project area realistically is within the highway right of way. So the map inside is a general indication acknowledging it doesn't represent the entirety of the Cedars development, but it does show generally that the area where this project is going to occur to make a difference is all outside of the city of Fernie. So we are leveraging our influence and positioning with the ministry to get anything done.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. I have a bit to say on this. First off, I guess kudos to us and staff. I mean, this has been a thing we've been trying to make happen, anything with this corridor for a long time. So actually getting something out of the ministry is amazing. I think firstly, this is a holistic problem. I mean, the traffic stop or sign change or roundabout or whatever doesn't happen in isolation. It's a whole corridor thing. It's about, the highway from one end to the other. And I think that the ministry is very far away and doesn't really see exactly how bad that area is. I mean, I've almost died at Famlerberg twice now. I'm sure plenty of people know someone who has been in an accident out there or have been in a close call themselves. The intersection there by the Stanford and the gas station, it's not too bad until it's rush hour, and then, oh my God, it's terrible. But really, I mean, I guess we should try and take what we can get here. I think ultimately the solution isn't this traffic stop or any of these other things. I think it's this corridor needs to be widened and improved. We've, as a province, I say we, like the royal we, like Canada, the province, the region as a whole, seems to have set growth as the big goal. And I remember when that road used to be empty, and now it's bumper to bumper, Canada Day weekend or whatever. It's 10 minutes to turn onto the highway. You try turning left in anywhere in West Fernie, and it's like a traffic jam. And, to what staff said earlier, that's not actually a city of Fernie problem. That's a provincial issue, mostly, just because they're the ones in control of it. So long story short, I think this is the least we can get done. I'll take what I can get. If we can get this done, I think that's great, but I think we should stay on the province for more of this. If they want tourism to be a driver of the provincial economy, Highway 3 as a whole needs to see some serious upgrades beyond just us putting in an intersection.
Mr. Baranowski?
Thank you. I appreciate the kudos to staff, and council certainly has been strong advocates. I think really recognition needs to go to Hillary Barnett and Lindsay McKinnon with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit as well. We have looked across a table at each other over a $30 million roundabout for a number of years, and them making the leap to look at alternative designs and investing that money and bringing this forward, starting to find a critical path where we could come to a common agreement is really due to their commitment and their locals. They drive this highway. We see them on the trails and say hi around town at Wednesday socials. But those two in particular and their team are quite good. Says a person who shares your experience and perspective on the ministry very frequently. So.
With that, I will ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Staff recommendation is that council endorse the cost sharing agreement, authorize its execution and direct staff to negotiate with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit and engage with other benefiting parties to develop an equitable funding model for potential future Highway 3 and Mount Fernie Park Road improvements.
Mover, Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any further discussion? I appreciate the inclusion of other benefiting parties because the regional district has a role in this, I think, and that allows us to bring them in when we know the full cost. So I appreciate that. With that, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Cost based on that percentage?
You may go. You don't have to stay for the rest of this riveting stuff. Thank you for your attendance. Item 11.1, Coal Creek Road Montane Campground Development Variance, a report from our newly inaugurated Manager of Engineering. Welcome, Mr. Pennell.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm just going to struggle through the technology here to get the presentation out.
That's your first real test. No. There's no rush.
Okay. Does this look right to everybody? There you go. So good evening. Here tonight to just present the application and some supplemental information regarding the development variance permit application submitted by Montaigne Developments to support access to their campground development. Double click. Some background on it. Try to keep it brief. It's been a really long agenda for you guys. As I said, Montaigne Developments, Pearstone is planning to use Coal Creek Road as a primary access to its phase 1 and phase 2 campgrounds, and as such has submitted a DVPA, which outlines a proposal to rely on the existing condition of Coal Creek Road and vary the bylaw number 2514, which is the development servicing bylaw. The variance is removing the requirement for curb and gutter and underground drainage, removing the requirement for asphalt surfacing, and removing the requirement for full illumination. As you can see in this really small picture, but it's in the report. There's a section approximately 1 kilometer long that is the subject of the variance, the existing Coal Creek Road, where it ends, where the pavement ends to up to the proposed phase 2 campground entrance. It's shown in the figure. Some discussion. So some things to consider. The subdivision and development servicing bylaw aims to ensure durable, safe infrastructure for new developments. And this variance would depart from that bylaw. So the departure from the standard is supported by a few points brought forth by the developer and upon consideration from staff. So bring some of those considerations forward tonight. It is a unique land use. It's a campground situated on the boundary between developed subdivision and undeveloped natural lands. The roadway would be intended to function more like a Forest Service road to an unpaved campground rather than a city street to a paved subdivision. The impact on neighbors and the city transportation network, as a member of the public did bring forth some good points today. There are existing trails that come from the campground, proposed campground area into town. As you said, you go where you know, and there would be obviously potential recreational users, bikers, walkers on the road, but there would be no major change to the broader community and the connectivity that the current Coal Creek Road provides. Just an additional note regarding the illumination is from the campground, there would be an illuminated pedestrian route through Montaigne Parkway and Pine Ave. But again, going where you know, it would be a gravel road that does not have illumination on it on Coal Creek Road. So the cost of repair and maintenance is a big consideration when looking at this variance, and we typically spend around $6,200 a year on maintaining this section of gravel road. That is one round of grading every spring and dust suppression applied for that cost. So that kind of equates to around $155,000 in 2025 dollars over the next 25 years. If you compare that to a road being paved with asphalt and looking at potential rehabilitation in 25 years, that would cost around $450,000, with that being just a mill and overlay, which is essentially no upgrades to any subgrade, just a refresh on the pavement itself. So there's a bit of a cost difference there. And then there's a potential for future flood damage, which was brought up in the variance permit application itself. Staff agrees that yes, there is a section of that Coal Creek Road that is subject to flood. During the atmospheric rain event previously, there was sections of the road that were damaged and then subsequently repaired and armored, but there still remains portions of the road that are within the floodplain subject to erosion and damage from future flood. So paving it, you would want to consider the additional cost of protecting that. And if you didn't, then you'd be looking at additional costs to repair a paved road versus a gravel road.
Sorry, Mr. Pennell, on that note, in a subsequent exemption request, the inundation study suggests that water could potentially go over, or that road would be subject to flooding. And I'm no hydrologist, but it looks like it could potentially be erosion of the bank and the armoring.
Yes.
Would we be at risk as a municipality, knowing that if we paved that road, and I guess the way I'm asking this is kind of backwards, it would potentially be considerable greater cost to pave that road and protect that infrastructure if we know, we can't ignore the fact that there's a potential flood risk. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Like it may not just be the cost of upgrading the road, it's also the cost of protecting the road. I guess I'm repeating,
that's right.
repeating what you just said.
No, yeah, that's right. I agreed. And this particular section, I guess maybe I could go back for everyone's visual. It would be approximately where the longer straight stretch of Coal Creek is parallel to the road, kind of where the barn is located. So more toward the left half of the screen, if anyone's looking at the presentation right now. The other portion where Coal Creek butts up to the road it did damage the road and subsequently was armored. Yeah. To be honest, that wasn't engineered through the city, so I'm not exactly sure what level of flood that is protected for, but it seems that in the inundation studies that we've seen from NHC consultant showing flood still and covering the road on the, I guess, the west portion, as you mentioned. That being said, there technically is an alternative with St. Margaret's Road. So it's not like you'd be completely stranded if that's a consideration. There is still a way out. And then also for phase one particularly, the Montaigne development does have an alternate access from Montaigne Parkway. I'm not 100% on what level of paving that would have in the immediate future, but.
Thank you. Councillor Adia Kelly.
I just wanted to clarify, are we talking about up to where the yellow gate is across from the old landfill site? The yellow?
That's right. The recent, sorry, Councillor Adia Kelly, the current gate that Montaigne has implemented there, that marks the phase two campground entrance, proposed campground
Perfect.
entrance.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I was right.
Oh, Councillor Rounds.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to give staff the opportunity to reply back to one of the speakers that we had earlier in the evening. And they made a pretty remarkable statement here, fish-bearing waterways being compromised. How true is that?
I think that that's firmly out of staff's jurisdiction.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think if council wanted to direct staff to inquire with the ministry, you can do so by resolution or ask ask the ministry for that, but that's out of staff's jurisdiction specifically.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, further to that, CAO, we're currently doing permitted work in the Coal Creek bed, right? So that comment I thought that threw me a bit.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Back to the comment about access and St. Margaret's Road and Montaigne Parkway. I'm curious why that wasn't chosen as the primary access. Do we have any knowledge of that? As that is already a paved road?
Up to a point. It stops immediately at St. Margaret's Cemetery.
Sorry, no, I meant Montaigne Parkway and down crossing Coal Creek and then up through Montaigne, because there is access to the campground and everything built from that direction.
Mayor, through to council. I don't want to speak directly for the developer, but my understanding is that phase 1, that is the case. Phase 2 does not have a proposed driving, I guess, vehicle bridge to phase 2 of the campground. It's just a pedestrian bridge that is potentially going to be built across Coal Creek. So that would mean the primary access to phase 2 definitely would require the variance, or it would be requiring Coal Creek Road as the primary access. Yeah, and again, St. Margaret's and Coal Creek are both unpaved at a certain point.
Yeah. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I'm not an expert by any means, Your Worship, but just thinking about it, there would be less impact to residences with what the proponent has proposed, right? Because you'll be going by only a few residences to get down to the current location that they're looking at, right? As opposed to going completely through a residential area or going up Bridgemont and going through 2 different residential areas to go down St. Margaret's. So it seems to me to make the most sense to go the way it's proposed. Sorry, that wasn't articulated well.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. There's no permanent residence down there along that road currently, or any in the planning pipeline, are there?
Yeah, through to Councillor Shoesmith. No, not that I am aware of. There is future phasing in Montaigne itself, accessed through Montaigne Parkway is my understanding. The only other thing would be the apart from logging and other recreational users up Coal Creek, it would be the kind of new trailhead at the River Road extension that is, again, recreational users, but there's no permanent residence planned.
Thank you.
Well, and presumably the logging will soon come to an end, given that Nature Conservancy has purchased 45,000 hectares of Kootenai forest lands up the valley.
Agreed. Yeah, I regret not mentioning that in the initial report because that information kind of came up after.
No, and in fact, I wouldn't expect you to, because NCC hasn't officially announced it.
Yeah.
Doman announced it because of a fear that it would affect their share price, but NCC is waiting on the federal government to make their announcement.
We'd be making a lot of assumptions, but right
Yeah.
now, that potentially would reduce a lot of the wear and tear on the road. Typically, grading and dust suppression survive a lot longer to highway vehicles, or I should say light vehicles, like even if it is a Super Duty pickup and a camping trailer, compared to logging trucks, multi-axle weight ratings that are a lot higher, I guess, and beat up that road quite a bit more.
Agreed. Mr. Bornowski?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, while there's information maybe outside of my domain, we have no formal enforcement actions or open files disputing the campground and Coal Creek or Brewery Creek. And so just to be clear, within what is our, like, we do deal with works in and about a stream, and we do deal with permits. We don't have any enforcement action underway, or we would be dealing with that before bringing reports like this forward.
I appreciate that clarification. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. Just on the topic of wear and tear on the road, well, I fully appreciate that heavy machinery, the logging is going to probably have a more significant impact per trip. Just some back of the napkin math, if the campground has 100 camp spots, it's open for 6 months of the year, and those are occupied 80% of the time, that's roughly 30,000 additional trips on that road. So are you suggesting that that's not going to have a big impact on the wear and tear on the road?
The consideration, I guess, there hasn't been a traffic impacts study. I commend you on your math there. But I guess for consideration there is that maintenance costs that were, I guess another piece of context would be Montaigne Parkway itself, when it had heightened traffic on it due to the Montaigne development. To maintain a certain level of surface or of service, there was an increased maintenance program put on that, where an additional round of grading, an additional round of dust suppression was applied. Whether that was fully deemed as sufficient or not, again, that would be looking at another $150,000 per se per year if there was another application, which would still be less cost to city, to taxpayers, but agreed, there's no real traffic study to support the, I guess, observation that typically the logging trucks are expected to be the most damaging to the road condition.
Further?
Just as a follow-up, yeah, and the comment about Montaigne Parkway is a perfect segue to where I was going, and I guess my concern is the service level expectation, and if this is meant to be a tourist attraction, attracting tourists, and that much traffic leaves the road rutted and potholed, and I know how much feedback I got from residents of Montaigne about the condition of that road, given the service standard we had in place for maintaining it. What is the consequence or repercussion or risk of those same degradations happening to the road that's being accessed primarily by tourism?
Mayor, through the council, agreed. I mean, it's depends how council and city wants to support current levels of service on that road. There are some users that we can't control necessarily, albeit maybe less in the future with the logging discussion we just had, but it's a cost that's to be considered, I guess. Again, the recommendation is at this point is that we accept the application. Weighing, if you want additional information, I guess I don't know exactly what you're looking for, but we can work on getting more scenarios or supplemental information for you to help make a decision.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. The figure that I'm reading in the report was if we were to go to, say, 2 rounds of grading and dust, it would go from 6,200 to 12,400, like not 150,000, just to clarify. I just wanted to bring up a point also about the aesthetics. Like, do we want to pave over everything? There is some, I hesitate to also pave over everything just from a standpoint of that. You know, people use that because it's natural, because there's recreation, there's bikers, there's hikers, there's snowmobilers, there is logging, there are all those things that have been traditional to the area. I also want to point out too that at a recent OCP task force meeting, the concept of dark skies was brought up. So do we really want to pave over and light up everything? I'm not sure that I do. I think what the staff has said in the report makes sense. I don't think it's unreasonable. The campground concept in that area seems to me to be a really good use of that property. After years of pretending there was going to be a golf course there, it's going to bring potentially more dollars into the tourism economy as well. And we can't deny that there's already a ton of traffic on that road. There already is. So to sort of blame the campground for rutting, I think would be, yep, there'll be some increased traffic, but I'm not sure that it's going to impact the road that badly with the road as is. So frankly, Your Worship, I would like to move the recommendation that staff made and accept the application.
Is anyone seconding it? Councillor Shoesmith, discussion?
Yeah, just to buttress Councillor Audie Kelly's excellent point there, actually. I grew up just outside of town on Burma Road, which was a gravel and dirt road. Actually, when I was a kid, it was a couple ruts in the mud. And it was a yearly thing where somebody'd get stuck there on Christmas and we'd have to break up Christmas dinner and pull them out of the mud. But anyways, we recently developed it and, you know, the big wide asphalt roads and all the lights and I just don't like it. The aesthetics thing. You're absolutely right. Pretty well everybody up there is like, oh, I liked it the way it was. So you do actually make a really good point with that. For me, what I'm seeing here, I do have some concerns, but they're not huge. On one hand, what we've got is a chance to increase the amount of taxable revenue that we're seeing coming in, add an amenity to the town, utilize something that's currently underutilized. I mean, I used to paintball out there. I kind of regret seeing it all turn into not a paintball course, but you know. On the other hand, yeah, that's a floodplain. That access can get choked and washed out. Should there wind up being 1 million people there permanently, that would be a problem. But as I understand it, this is a campground. It's an amenity. I think that as it stands, we're adding to our tax base without adding to our maintenance headache. I think that's a pretty huge win.
Councillor Ramirez, then Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Your Worship. I kind of echo the two councillors across the table on this. Like, I've been here only for like last 16 years in Fernie, and I still remember Maintenance Road and you know, Ghost Rider subdivision still unpaved, and I could see garter snakes, and they've all disappeared. Like, you know, I don't agree with asphalting every square inch of land. Absolutely. I do have one historical question, Your Worship, and I was surprised that it didn't come across in any of the package. Our last such application presumably was the Fernie RV Resort, RV Park, wouldn't it?
Mhm.
So this is more like an open-ended question for you guys. Like, are there any things, if we had gone back in time, done differently for that application? And are we using some of those learnings to sort of inform this particular application? Because I do remember, like this was early in the term when the CFO was talking about, the water usage, for example, being an issue with that proponent. Are we at a point where we have reduced all these, misgivings, so to say, about that particular application, and have we kind of addressed them with this application? If you know what I mean.
Mayor, through to Councillor Ramadas. Sorry, just to clarify, you're asking about the campground on 6th Ave? Yeah. So we did look into that as a example because it is a relevant example in the recent history. And I think I briefed how I mentioned it in the report, but at that time there was, let me just make sure I use the report to make sure I don't get it wrong. It is a paved campground, and they didn't request a variance. My understanding is that they consulted with the planning department. That developer wanted paved access to the campground, but they agreed that there's mutual benefit to the city and to the developer. So they agreed on a cost sharing agreement. The city provided the road prep, and the landowner paid for the paving. And my understanding, there's the road's obviously inherently has drainage, surface drainage anyway, but there's no illumination. I don't believe there's illumination on that road.
No.
So it's kind of a middle ground. They didn't ask for variance, but they did ask for a cost sharing agreement for mutually beneficial solution. I believe that would have been under a different bylaw, and I'm not 100% on that bylaw's wording too, if its requirements were the exact same. And then finally, again, that is a bit of a different campground, I guess, aesthetically than the developers proposing for the Montaigne campground. As far as paving and natural spaces and trees and everything, it's very much a traditional pack it in, it's safe, you can see your neighbors, and it's paved for the kids to ride their bikes around and stuff, which is a bit of a different situation than what Montaigne campground is proposing.
Mr. Baranowski?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nick. And I'll ask Director Burdett to follow up just from the financial perspective. We had a lot of learnings from the last application about the success of being able to develop campgrounds in flood fringe and potential floodways, and in understanding the risk of loss of assets based on flooding. And so if you look on the flood protection works around the RV resort, those are the responsibility of the owner of the resort, and we have seen them lost because of some erosion into the Elk River, and we've had extended discussions about how do we regain that, which was not just an asset for the resort in terms of flood protection or the berm, while not a formal dike. It was a community asset and a visitor asset in terms of the walking trail. And so those are the kind of discussions we have ongoing, and some of the rationale in terms of my consideration and endorsing the recommendation of staff in the report in looking at the expense or the cost and the complexity of infrastructure we build on known avulsion or erosion zones. And similarly, there would be a risk of a loss of a paved trail there when we were looking at our active transportation paving that connected from the Vic out to Mount Fernie Park Road. We considered what other paths do we do, and looking around the RV resort where it's not built to that flood standard, it's not protected. It doesn't make sense to invest, that kind of paving active transportation corridor on top of that berm. So it's some of those learnings and the importance of having easements and right-of-ways and access, all of that. And we're quite a different organization than we were a number of years ago. And Mr. Burdett can speak to, the utilities or financial considerations if you're interested.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to see everything paved either. I fully support this development's variance permit and keeping it unpaved, keeping it dark skies. My concern is that we're letting this go without considering the full long-term cost, because it's the taxpayer who is going to have to pay to grade it, to plow it, to maintain all those things. But it's not generally for the benefit of our community. It's for the benefit of the campground, which has secondary, tertiary benefits to our community. Yes, I see that. But the immediate costs are on our taxpayers, while the immediate benefits are on a private individual, a private company. So I just want to make sure with my line of questioning that we are considering the full scope of implications. So to that effect, Mr. Bird, I don't know if you have the numbers at hand, but if we do have a service level expectation and we move to 3 times a year grading that road, and that costs us $18,000 a year, if my numbers are correct.
18.6.
Yeah, if you were to break that into easier math, maybe over the 25-year lifespan comparison, you'd be looking at, instead of repaving for $450,000, yeah, you'd be looking at 3 times that 150,000 that you would have spent throughout there. So it's still comparable, but like you said, 3 applications or 4 applications of dust suppression and additional grading start to tip you the other way, where although it's been a low annual cost over the lifespan of that road, it becomes more expensive to keep the gravel.
Yeah, cumulatively, it will be more expensive going to that higher service standard as opposed to the asphalt paving. But to counterbalance that, I guess, do we have any sort of idea of what the property tax revenue would look like?
It's a fair question.
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. I was prepared to speak to utility rates. So if you give me a couple minutes, I can look up the rough property tax. Maybe just using the other large campground as an example. But I guess while I'm on the mic, utility rates, we do charge the hotel rate per site for the other campgrounds. So that's not insignificant. They have over 100 sites. So that's a fairly large utility bill every quarter. And then I can look up the property tax in just a couple minutes here.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor McIsaac?
Thank you, Worship. Just thinking that if we're going to stop paving and adding lights everywhere, that's probably going to help the budget considerably over the next 25 years. I'd also would point out that the last time that we accepted a gravel road instead of a paved one, we spent years being beaten about the head and shoulders for that decision until it finally got done. So we should be wary of choosing not to do that. But letting that go, my actual concern about this one is actually the illumination. Putting a whole bunch of people out there cycling and walking in on that road. At night, Coal Creek Road is as dark as the inside of a cow. And if there are a bunch of people walking up and down that road with no separated sidewalks, gravel road that is not in the best condition at the best of times, and a bunch of people driving back and forth out there, that presents potential risk. So I'm also a fan of dark skies. I don't think we do need to light up everything like the inside of a Save-On, but I'm wondering if there are opportunities for safer illumination for cyclists and pedestrians going out there if we're going to have the kinds of numbers that we're talking about going out there. So is there some sort of compromise that could be made that would ensure that there is some safe form of illumination for people that are going to be coming back and forth to town?
Mayor, through Council McIsaac, yeah, I agreed. There could be other solutions implemented that are, partial. There still be a variance from the bylaw, but again, there is a coal discovery trail there that is fully physically separated from the road, and you'd have access to it directly from the phase one, the bridge across from phase one, or from phase two once you got to St. Margaret's Road, leaving a short section that would be exposed. So that's definitely a consideration. Again, and an alternate, potentially there could be signage in place or, wayfinding that instead of go where it's more explicitly advertised that there's a safer way in and out of town that's through the Montaigne Parkway route.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. And in fact, part of the reason why I was concerned about this is where I live, I get to watch people refuse to walk on the Elk Valley pathway and walk on the highway. I don't know why they do that, but they do. And cycle on it and avoid a perfectly good sidewalk that's off. And so maybe if it's not an illumination problem, maybe it is a communication problem of signage that says, please don't walk down this road. There is a path, because the problem is it'll be on the opposite side from where the campground is, right? Mm-hmm. So people drive in, they don't know the pathway is there. So maybe this is just a communication and signage issue. So maybe this is just feedback for the developer that to address that communication thing. Happy to leave that in your hands.
Councilor Roddy Kelly. Oh, sorry. Mr. Burdett.
Thanks, Mayor Mulligan. This is a complete estimate because I don't know what size will be of the new campground, but it's roughly $70,000 to $80,000 in property tax per year.
Thank you. Councilor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Director. Well, the comment about being beaten up about the paving at Montaigne Parkway, those are going into residential neighborhoods, right? We're talking about rural, hopefully a rural feel camping. And I want to mention that I attended Thanksgiving at the barn this weekend, and despite, Mayor Milligan was there as well, despite the really inclement weather, there was a really good turnout. But I wanted to say that we had parked, my friend and I, on Montaigne, and there is a lovely route to get over to the farm and the camping. So there are options for people walking and cycling within the development area. And I'm not suggesting that we don't pave anything or don't light anything. What I'm saying is, aesthetically speaking, in certain areas, you want that rural mountain living authentic sort of feel. And if we keep taking that away with paving and save-on style lighting, we're going to lose that. I think that that area, and maybe I'm biased because I was born and raised here, and that's always been go down Coal Creek to sled, go down Coal Creek to get your, crazy carpet
Drink,
and your saucer, right?
Honest.
Go have parties, right? Right, Your Worship? Like, those are the things that you don't necessarily want to lose. And I think that that area is quite lovely, and keeping it sort of that rural feel, I think, is important.
Is this new information? New question? Okay. Go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just the CFO piqued my interest here. Just for my understanding, CFO, like how much is the approximate property taxes we are getting from Fernie RV Park right now?
It's roughly that number, 70 to 80.
What is this?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear your follow-up.
Same number as the $700,000 to $800,000.
No, 70 to 80, not 700.
Okay, sorry, okay, I heard it as 700 to 800, okay, 70 to 80, okay. Awesome. Exactly, that's what I thought. I was like, I was too excited, thank you.
With that, I think, sorry.
Your worship, I was just going to say procedurally, you are accepting the application.
Yeah.
And then there's public notification, and then it actually comes back for consideration. So I just wanted to bring council's attention back to the resolution at the table. It's to accept the application and move forward with the process of considering it. If council had consensus on a specific requirement, it would be useful to know that, to say, accept the application and bring it forward for consideration with an additional requirement of X or Y. But if not, I just wanted to bring council's attention back to the resolution on the table being to accept the application.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know if we would have consensus on this, but it's been raised in terms of particularly pedestrian movement in and around the campsite and on Coal Creek Road. If a robust communications and signage plan that keep people off, pedestrians and cyclists to the greatest extent possible, keep people off Coal Creek Road. Because I don't want to put us in a situation where we're accepting a significant liability for people who are uninitiated with the area and they're walking on a dark road at night. And the point has been made, it is very dark. The road surface, it's not paved, but it's black. And it is quite dark out there. So I think that is something that would be a significant requirement just from a community safety perspective. Councillor Romanes?
Your worship, and I also think there is an action on this fisheries thing. Like I don't know what the mechanism is. Again, I'll endorse this application. This is a good application, but that one piece that the speaker spoke to, some way to address that concern. I don't know how that looks like, but I'll ask the staff to recommend a path forward for that.
I don't know if you want to make a comment, Mr. Bornowski, or take that under consideration and report back at some.
If I can take that under consideration and report back, I just need to find out if there's a way for us to follow up on whether there's ongoing work happening or a concern or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor McIsaac, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I guess I wanted to, if I could, sort of amend your comments there, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to be hyper prescriptive here. We're trying to be create an opportunity. So, but what I do want to do is ensure that the safety of especially non-motorized traffic going in and out of there is held up. So what I would rather do the communication to staff to do the communication to the developer before that it comes back is what is your strategy?
Yeah,
Right?
I guess
Whatever that happens to
that's
be.
what I meant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
To Mr. Bornowski's point in terms of informing the when this comes
Thank you.
back. I'll entertain one more from Councillor Shoesmith and then we'll vote.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Just to address Councillor Ramadas's comment there, I believe the speaker said they'd already been in touch with a ministry. So if that were the case, that would be well beyond and above our scope of.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. He did say he was being contacted with the Natural Resource Office. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. That's a lot of discussion for a unanimous vote. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Purnell. Oh, are you still at the podium for the next one? Oh, no. This is a manager of planning. Sorry. Yeah, I suspect we do. That I'll ask for a motion to extend the meeting beyond 10 o'clock. Moved by Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Simolini. I got our managers confused there for a moment.
That's perfectly fine, Your Worship. Bear with me for a second. I'm just going to bring up the presentation and hopefully we can proceed before 10 o'clock. I mean, proceed with ending the meeting, not beginning the presentation.
Sorry, should we take if people need a bit of a break? Or you're just getting a snack? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Simile.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have the benefit of it being very similar subject matter here, so I will move through this as quickly as possible. And if there's any questions, please stop me or wait until we're finished with the presentation and we can move on. So again, with Montaigne Campground and Farm, there is a bylaw exemption request that's coming forward to council tonight for the floodplain management bylaw. In the staff report, you see there are 5 items that are requested for exemption. The individual campsites, campground office, which is proposed to be a temporary building, internal access roads, and the existing barn. Now, it's really important to note that in our floodplain management bylaw, Area A of the Coal Creek floodplain, the bylaw says that no development permits shall be issued. So this section of the exemption request is really just asking for us to be allowed to issue the hazard lands development permit for the area. The second is for the Area B, which is the flood overflow area of Coal Creek, to allow for the washroom and shower facilities. That section is like in our bylaw, you're not allowed to have these washroom and shower facilities. However, in the provincial guidelines, it clearly says that wash houses are permitted in campground areas in floodplains. So I just wanted to touch on that. It's also interesting to note that our floodplain management bylaw allows areas used for habitation in the floodplain associated with agriculture. So in this case, a caretaker's residence for the Montaigne farm is already allowed in our bylaw. So it doesn't actually require an exemption, albeit ironically, that is probably the most potentially concerning use in the floodplain would be a residential use, but that isn't included in this request because it doesn't need to be. So on this map in the presentation, you can see Area A and Area B, where you see, I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen there or not, but where you see Area B, that's essentially phase 2 of the campground. And this Area B here is essentially phase 1 of the campground. There are a few campsite areas that encroach into Area A, but the campsite isn't fully in Area A. So it's worth knowing that the majority of the campground is in Area B. But again, in order for us to issue the hazard lands development permit, the exemption is required. Also worth noting that in conversations with the applicant, campground office isn't an immediate thing that needs to happen. And the proposal is to have it more of a temporary building, such as you could use an RV, for example, as your campground office. Which is not a lot different than just allowing for camping in the area, which would be the same as the campsites exemption. I do want to note that there is a couple things associated with this, with the hazard lands development permit as well. The exemption would allow us to issue that permit, but the permit does contain conditions as to the site's safety, evacuation plan, for example. And also there is a covenant that would sidecar the hazard lands development permit as well that would need to be registered on title that has indemnification language. It would go over flood construction levels for certain features. So all of that is being taken care of by staff at the same time as this exemption coming forward.
Sorry, is that I apologize, is it the S219 covenant that's referenced in the report?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Because I did have a question about that, whether they included indemnification language to protect essentially the city in the event of a flood.
Yes, Your Worship, it does. It's standard in our Section 219 covenants for floodplain development in floodplain areas. Not just from the safety perspective, but also from the loss of infrastructure perspective as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So those are covered as well. And it is worth noting in the last item, we discussed sort of the learnings from the previous campground. We are applying a lot of those learnings with this application as well. Fernie RV Resort does have a covenant on title, and they do have hazard lands development permits, and there are exemptions with that as well. So we're following a very similar process, albeit the bylaws have changed since that development as well, but we're still following the process with these new bylaws to ensure that this development is done in a safe manner as well. Again, important to note that with this application, we do have a report from a qualified registered professional going over these uses, saying they're safe and providing recommendations as to how to have them remain safe and ensure that that campers are safe in, for example, an avulsion event or a flooding event.
Thank you, Mr. Similini. That was one of my questions. As we go forward, there's a whole bunch of recommended mitigations. We will work with the developer to ensure those mitigations are meet the safety standards that you've suggested.
That's correct, Your Worship. Okay. So the hazard lands development permit itself references the report directly. So it says the campground is approved contingent on the recommendations in the report being carried out. So the report is actually attached to the hazard lands development permit, and then the recommendations in that report are part of the development.
And that's the same report that's in our package.
That's correct. Yeah.
Can I point something out in that report? On page 3, the little I's, the last paragraph. Northwest Hydraulic Consultants denies any liability whatsoever to other parties who may obtain access to this report for any injury, loss, or damage suffered by such parties arriving for the use or reliance upon this report or any of its contents. So they have said, don't rely on this report. Like, is that standard? Like, what is that?
Yes, Your Worship. That is standard in reports from geotechnical professionals. Again, if you'd like some more information on why it's there and what it means, I can come back to council with that.
So I guess the fundamental question I'm asking is, we're relying on a report they've told us they accept no responsibility for. Thank you, Ms. Weir.
That's standard language in engineering consulting reports where they're specifically saying it's for the use by the client so that people don't access the report online and then apply it to make
to their
other unrelated decisions for their own purposes. So that's very common to specify this is for you who paid for it use.
Because you can see how it lands with a layman, right? Like that got me a bit nervous.
Thanks, Director Weir. That's an important point of clarification.
Thank you.
To be
Dr. Ramadas.
Your Worship, I thought about the same too, but again, in my day job, we hire a lot of consulting engineers, geophysicists, hydrogeologists, and all these folks, and it's a standard verbiage. And I had asked the same question to one of our consultants, and they said the same thing. You're not going to go use this for some other purpose. This is for this scope of study.
Thank you.
And you shall just adhere to this for this project only.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Please proceed. Sorry.
No problem, Your Worship. Thank you. So that just pretty much wraps up the presentation. I do want to apologize to our corporate officer who has to read this this recommendation. But it is important because this recommendation does become a certified resolution from council, which essentially is the permit of exemption to the applicant. So
you need a glass of water? Here. Please.
The staff recommendation is that council grant an exemption to floodplain management bylaw number 2348/2018 for the properties legally described as parcel 87 C 139017I District Lot 4589 Kootenay District, except plans 6273, 622, 6724, 6726, 6912, 6913, 9301, 9393, 12703, 13080, 14415, 15270, NEP 20274, NEP 22339, NEP 62291, NEP 62407, NEP 62408, NEP 64864, NEP 66829, NEP 66830, NEP 91126, EPP 44 902 and EPP 45555. In Lot A District, Lot 4589 Kootenay District Plan, EPP 126163. In Lot A District, Lot 4589 Kootenay District Plan 9587, accept plans NEP 22339, NEP 62291, NEP 62407, NEP 62408, NEP 64706, NEP 64864, NEP 65351, NEP 66828, NEP 66830, EPP 44900, EPP 51119, EPP 45555, EP 48838, EPP 55349, EPP 72587, EPP 77751, EPP 87188, EPP 90403, and EPP 100240. And Lot 1 District, Lot 4589 Kootenay District Plan, EPP 77696, accept plans EPP 77751, EPP 87188, and EPP 100240. Okay. To allow for the development of a children's animal farm and campground in the Coal Creek floodplain, specifically 1, individual campsites in the Coal Creek floodway and setback area defined in Section 8, subsection A, and Schedules B1 and B2 of the Consolidated Floodplain Management Bylaw number 2348. 2, washroom and shower facilities in the Coal Creek overflow and potential of evolution area defined in Section 8, subsection B, in B1 and B2 of the Consolidated Floodplain Management Bylaw number 2348. Office related to the campground use in the Coal Creek floodway and setback area defined in Section 8A in Schedules B1 and B2 of the Consolidated Floodplain Management Bylaw number 2348. Existing barn in the Coal Creek floodway and setback area defined in Section 8, subsection A, and Schedules B1 and B2 of the Consolidated Floodplain Management Bylaw number 2348. And 5, internal access roads and circulation routes in the Coal Creek floodway and setback area defined in Section 8, subsection A, and Schedules B1 and B2 of the Consolidated Floodplain Management Bylaw number 2348.
Heroic work.
Thank you.
Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Artie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just so that I can make sure I've heard it clearly, to your comments about section S219, and I didn't make a note of it, but I did hear Mr. Similini mention it, that we have protected ourselves as a council by granting this exemption in a hazard area. And I want to make sure that that is absolutely clear, because at UBCM, one of the sessions I sat in on was climate disasters and the significant impact that they're having, not just to communities, but also to the insurance industry, and how that is very rapidly changing liability and coverage of insurable areas. So just to ensure that we are confident as a council and a municipality that we're not going to have liability come back on us for granting this exemption in the future.
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor Hamilton, just to go over the, I guess, layers of protection to council. There's a section 219 covenant with indemnification language that is signed by the applicant and the city registered on title. The hazard land development permit itself has some form of indemnification language, albeit not as steel clad as the covenant. There is a report from a qualified registered professional who has sealed and stamped that report, saying that the development is safe for the proposed use as long as the recommendations are followed. And there's also a site evacuation plan that will be submitted to us as part of the application process to ensure that if there is an event, that the site can be evacuated safely, and life safety would be
Further?
Sorry, yeah, just as a follow-up with the evacuation plan, and we've spoken at length about lessons from the other RV resort campground within community plans. And do I recall correctly that part of their not zoning, I'm sorry, it's late at night, the word is escaping me, but permission to build it, that they had to do annual evacuation drills. Is that correct?
Mr. Bornowski?
The chief is directly involved. There's an annual refresher review. We ensure that they're posted. You will remember at one point there was a access ramp onto the new dike by Maiden Lake that was gated by one landowner, and then a whole bunch of work that we did with the resort and that landowner to ensure that that secondary emergency egress or emergency access route was able to be open and free and clear of obstructions. But I think it's an annual, I think it's ensuring it's posted, and we review it once a year, I do believe.
Yeah, that's correct. And your worship, to the council, there's different ways to look at it as well. I know with the RV resort that was the case. However, with Lubers, which also has a similar plan, albeit different use, there's just a requirement for them to have their employees trained in it and have it posted. So we weren't responsible for review of that. So there's that angle as well. But we'll work with the applicant in this case to ensure that there's a wholesome evacuation plan. And again, some of the recommendations from the qualified registered professional actually, and this will be included in the covenant as well. There's certain sites, for example, that shouldn't be occupied during freshet seasons. So that just takes them right out of play when we're in our high water season. So that's important as well.
Thank you. Any other discussion? With that, I will call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simile. And thank you to our corporate officer. You know, they do this thing at the RD, and I don't know if we can change our procedure bylaw, but she will read the introduction to the resolution and then say, as listed in the agenda. So with that, we are at 10:02. We do have council reports. Are people dying to say anything, or can we move council reports? Could we add it to our committee of the whole agenda to get people caught up? Is that? Oh. What? We'll do it at our next regular meeting.
But the thing is, as council, we could just overrule procedure. So we could just add it at the end.
We can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chair's discretion. I love doing that, suspending the rules. Okay, with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:48 p.m.